States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. Thanks all for coming. I know that there's people in the room for certain reasons, and you're going to notice that the agenda has been switched around a little bit, and we're just trying to figure out a flow that works best. And I think Heather hates that I skip over her town administrator's report at the end of the night. So we're going to move quickly through the first part of this and start with the town administrator report.
Oh, fantastic. So last week we actually had our monthly department head meeting, which went very well. We had a decent attendance as usual on that. We got everyone updated as to some new stuff that was happening that the town clerk will update us on in a little bit. We also had our very first representative board committee and commission meeting of its kind. We'll continue those monthly on Wednesdays. Those are not in a public meeting. They're like our department head meetings, but the idea is to give the opportunity to our boards, committees, and commissions to provide information, share what's happening, what's going on. No quorums are present at that time. We're able to share information that's vital to the town, also discuss upcoming things, strategies, budgets, what is going to be happening with the budget this year, other things like the annual town meeting and stuff like that. Other than that, there's not too much going on. At the end of the month, this month, there is a PVPC municipal aggregation meeting that I'm going to. I think Jackie might join me on that one. There are some other things coming up here and there with some conferences. There's an MMMPA Managers Boot Camp this week that I'll be going to on Thursday, so that's always very exciting. I've been working with other departments on grants that they're writing, which is very exciting as well. We've just turned out, I think, 2 or 3 of them this week, and we participated in a few CIC projects this year. That's Community Innovative Challenge grants. So we'll see how those all turn out.
That's it.
Told you short and sweet.
Okay. Next is select board updates and liaison reports. Really, all I have to say is if you are a member of the Board of Selectmen and you are a liaison to a committee, it would be really helpful if you started to go to those committee meetings. I know I go to the school committee every time they have one. They're working on their budget. They're starting to have those conversations early this year. They have a lot of questions and they're trying to figure out what to do. But if you have a question about what board or committee you are a liaison to, please ask. FYI, the Finance Committee has been lacking a liaison for quite some time, and it would be helpful in the communication of the fiscal 15-16 budget if the Board of Selectmen liaison was there. John, you get that? Okay. Could you go to the Finance Committee meeting? You're the liaison to them.
I am?
Yes.
Oh, I thought I was off of this.
Next, we have Town Clerk, Mrs. Domina. What do you have for us?
Thank you. Well, I'd like to update the board and the town residents of a new way that we are posting our meetings, agendas, minutes, and it's a new web, and it's called mytowngovernment.org, and it's been a joint effort, and John Fitzpatrick suggested taking a look at it, and I've been researching how we could become more transparent in posting our agendas and meetings. So I researched other candidates, other city and town clerks to see what they were doing, and I got a lot of positive feedback from this. So October 1st, we decided to actually launch this whole thing, and it's exciting to me. Positive, complies with all of the open meeting laws, and it's easily accessible through our town's website. Dr. Patrick put, it looks like a street sign, and it says public meetings notice or something like that, and it's outlined in red. You can't miss it. And so all you do is click on that, and it's a link to this website, and all of our meetings are right there in front of you. If you want to see what the agenda is, that's
When people post those themselves, like, does it all go through you?
It has, you have to be an authorized user, and I have to authorize that.
Okay.
Um,
So still posting a meeting still has to go through the town clerk's office before it gets on here?
No, a representative, if you are an authorized user, you automatically have access to post your own
Okay, and so
information.
do all, like, boards and chairman of boards and committees have access to that? Like, let's say the Board of Assessors wants to post a meeting. Can the chairman do that on their own?
Yes.
And the chairman of the
As long as
PQB can do it on their
As
own?
long as I've authorized them as a user, and
Okay.
they have a password.
Okay,
And whenever anyone posts anything, it automatically shoots email to me. So I can also keep it posted in the hallway. So it's very easy for me to keep tabs on it.
perfect.
Another way is you can access it is going by mytowngovernment.org / and then our zip code 01073. It automatically gets you right there. So there's a lot of good things about it. Anyone can subscribe to receive email alerts. So say at the select board, whenever you post anything, if you subscribe to it, it automatically goes to them, whoever's asked for that. Minutes can be accessed, and best of all, it's free.
Oh, that's a plus.
There's no
We like that
cost.
word, free. Great.
So I encourage everyone to check it out, and if anyone has any questions whatsoever, comments, suggestions, feel free to give me a call.
Excellent. Thank you
And
so
you're still going to
much.
be required to post that outside and a calendar?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So that's, you still got to do it in the regular places?
I am still going to continue to do that. Although this will be our official posting method, but I will, as a courtesy to everyone, to continue posting outside my office.
Okay, thank you.
But
Thank you.
just to clarify, Ed, she means outside on the bulletin board, not on the window.
I know, but there's a bulletin board outside. No, that's no more?
We were not required to. The open meeting laws require 24-hour access, and we comply with that with this system in accordance with the AG's office. So that
You're
puts us
still
in
going to
compliance.
put it on the door and on the calendar?
Just on the bulletin board.
Yeah, okay.
But we also are working closely with the library to see if we can get some signage put up there, so folks who may not have access to a computer and may want to access it on the computer can go to the website directly there and pull it up.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Hey, just a quick question, and thanks for all the work. You said you get an email that tells you when somebody posted. Now, for instance, if you're not here on vacation, is there a backup that gets that, or
No, it's
is it
just,
important if
I can
somebody...
access it from home too.
Oh, we don't want you to do
Access
that.
it any-
Not if you're on vacation in Hawaii. Is it important that somebody need to access it if you're not
No,
here?
because the official posting method is going to be this website.
Okay, so it's just, the email's just an FYI? That,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
And a courtesy, I'll continue to post it.
Thank you.
And if I could mention one more thing.
Sure.
We have a state election coming up on November 4th. So the last day to register to vote or change your party affiliation is October 15th.
So anybody at home, if you didn't hear that and you're not registered to vote, you have until October 15th to change your party affiliation or register. And don't forget to vote on November 4th. You're welcome. We now have Charlie McDonald for the Conservation Commission.
I'm going to sit up here, okay?
Yeah.
I have 4 issues to discuss. Unfortunately, 2 of them consist of money issues. The first would be Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. The Conservation Commission has, over the last 2 years, joined what is known as the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission Compact, and they provide us a lot of technical services and to some extent by contacts, political services. and they are responsible for helping us sort through all the bureaucratic issues associated with getting the recent land grant for the Greenway. And they help us also to deal with requests for performance, requests for qualifications, which is a fairly cumbersome bureaucratic challenge. And they have helped us with that. And they also helped us with the maps that we are developing. Over the last 2 years, we have developed some maps, and they usually charge us something like $1,500, unequivocally $1,500. We have been taking that out of our memorial funds, which are finite and going down with minimal interest at this point. And we would like support from the town. We asked for it in the last budget meeting for $1,500, and we are now with a budget of only $700. An example of what they provide us is for the last year, designs for maps, and this is an example of maps that are associated with Wolf Hill and the ZIPTA. And I think I speak reasonably well for the commission as well as the Greenway Committee and the Master Plan Implementation Committee that this organization provides really very critical services to support the technical strengths of the Conservation Commission and to implement things associated with stewardship. So I'm asking the Select Board to find $1,500 to help the Conservation Commission keep this compact with Pioneer Valley Planning Commission.
Is there a date that you renew that?
It's usually, we're way behind.
We're way
Because
behind.
I've been hustling, I've been looking at other sources, and we're at this point coming to you.
Chair, just to verify what you said, did you say you only received $750 this year?
That's correct.
And
That's our annual budget.
$750 or another $1,500?
We only have, the Conservation Commission has a budget of approximately $700, $750, $700. From, in the past, it's been $1,800, so it's been cut way down. But we always have taken from memorial funds, Hazel Young or the Conant Fund, $1,500. I've approached CPC, but there seems to be an administrative issue, and so their ability to contribute was questioned. So, so the first issue I'd like to bring up to the Select Board is support for the, and believe me, when we're going through this Greenway, we're going to need help. This is a complicated situation. And, for example, they can help us with the environmental, the engineering, and they've already volunteered if unfortunately we have a Phase 2 environmental on that property, they have access to EPA funds that would support this. And they managed to help us with this this grant. They've given me contacts very high in the DCR, Department of Conservation and Recreation. So politically and technically, they are really helping. That $1,500 goes a long way. And we would like support for this.
I guess I would say it's something that we have to look into. I can't say that there's $1,500 floating around without some conversation with Finance Committee and, you know, Donna and Vicky, and I can't say yes or no I can't say yes or no at this very minute without having a conversation with everybody else. But it's certainly a conversation that we can set up a meeting for and talk about, and then get right back to you.
Okay.
Charlie, is any of the, I know you've touched, you used your funds in the past.
Yes.
Did you have other funds that are either donations or?
No, we have a conservation fund, but it never seems to receive. We've advertised it, but it's never seemed to receive any funds. No donations.
I know, but you mean like the Whittemore Trust and stuff like that?
The Whittemore what?
Is there money that was available in the Whittemore Trust?
No. We only have the Conant and Hazel Young.
There's money left in the Hazel Young.
It's getting low.
I'm just wondering what your fallback position is.
We have funds in those things, but we'd have to get a vote from the Conservation Commission to spend them. Okay, the second point I'd like to introduce is the fact that we have initiated a project on the Whittemore Conservation Land, which is 35 acres at the end of Meadow Lane. And we had an Eagle Scout project that helped us open that space up. And this property has some unique trails, including the footpath trail of the old New Haven New Haven to Northampton Canal, the ancient one, the 1850-47. So we have this opened up, and the request I have now is solely to have the Select Board Chair sign a contract for a company called Conservation Works to help us do a number of things in that site. One would be upgrade the trail, because it's been developed, but there are sections that are associated with wetlands, which we'd like to shift. And there's a need for a bridge across a ravine to help design the trail. We also want to develop sufficient information to get the trail closer to the river. The initial trail is 200 feet away from the Manhan, and we'd like to get it to the river, which would require us to have a design and sufficient information to file for an NOI, a notice of intent, to build that trail in that area. So we have this project. We got information from Pioneer Valley Planning Commission that they provided us for a request for qualifications, and the number one company was Conservation Works. And we became familiar with them because right opposite the Manhan, right opposite the Whittemore, I should say, there is another parcel of 35 acres that's in Easthampton. It's called the Pomeroy Meadows Trail, and it has been recently refined. It's owned by the Pascomic Land Trust, and the overall goal in getting some additional work in NOI, for example, to the river, would be to be able to connect these two properties. The way that would be mechanically possible would be through a DCR grant, and we've been encouraged that we would be eligible for that, mainly because of the cross-town aspects of this project, as well as the traditional or historic aspects of the New Haven Canal, Northampton New Haven Canal. So basically, we applied to the CPC. We received $5,000. We came up with a few more $1,000 from our conservation funds, memorial funds. So we have a project that's going to be implemented this week by Conservation Works to, one, refine the trail, develop data for locating the trail closer to the river and getting sufficient data for an NOI. So those are the kinds of things. So I have a contract here, that an agreement that I'd appreciate. You can look over both the agreement and the proposal and sign it, okay?
Charlie, does that require any kind of match?
No, this is all paid for. And it's a, again, it's a, okay, you have both documents there with maps. The map shows the trail. There's a loop trail, and there's a connecting trail to the footpath of the canal. And it's we're very happy, very appreciative of the contribution that the Eagle Scout comes from Easthampton, but again, this is a cross-town project, and it would be eventually, we're going to have in the project, as it stands right now, with the monies available, a bridge, 30-foot bridge across a ravine. But eventually, we want to get a bridge across the Manhan, and that's where the DCR monies and a match, 80-20, would have to come into play. And that will be expensive, but that's down the pike. But we've been encouraged that we might be successful because of the dimensions of the project for two towns and this historical aspect of the properties. There were 2 or 3 locks for that canal in that area, in the Whittemore. And it would expand it to 70 acres, and it would make it a much more extensive trail.
Charlie, originally these were one parcel, right?
I'm sorry?
These 235
Yeah?
acres were originally one parcel, right? And they were broken up after, because Easthampton's conservation was picking up what was in Easthampton, and Southampton picked up what was in Southampton.
That might be the case, but I'm not familiar with that history.
Yeah, originally they were one parcel.
Okay.
You have no concerns after reading this, Heather?
I have a bunch of pictures here. If you're interested in the proposal, Conservation Works gave a 20-slide presentation last night to the Conservation Commission, so I can give that to you. I have an extra copy, too.
When does he need it signed?
When do you need it signed by, Charlie?
As soon as possible, basically.
When do you want to vote to have the board read it, provided that after the review
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to have the chair sign this after it's reviewed by the board.
Is there a second? Second.
I'm assuming if there's no concerns with it.
Yes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Charlie, are all 3 of these copies, do all 3 need to be signed?
No, only one
Just
contract.
one.
One contract in the proposal, and you can see how the proposal is filled out. It's very professional, fundamental in this whole approach we're using, which is different from what has been done in development of stewardship properties in the Conservation Commission, is that we're getting some professional help here because we have set up, and there are existing man-made structures that are dangerous, and they're not facile for a wide range of people to use, stairs and so on. And with the input from these people, we're refining these things, because the town does have liability for man-made structures on these properties, and if they're not really maintained well, or they're very unstable, it isn't a good deal.
So we'll look at them and then,
Yes.
okay.
I just got a question for Charlie. This is a pedestrian bridge.
I'm sorry?
This is a pedestrian bridge, I see.
That's right.
This is applying for that money too?
The first bridge that's going in within the next few months, maybe the next month, is a pedestrian bridge 30 foot over a ravine that has some of the drainage coming out from Meadow Lane, some of the stormwater management systems they have there. If we complete this project, we present ourselves as fairly serious, both to the people in Pascomic as well as the DCR. And in February, we're going to apply for another grant, and this will be maybe over 6 figures. That would enable us to get an engineered bridge across the Manhattan. That would be a sort of an 80-20 thing, which would have to go through a town vote.
We know
2
what
bridges.
that would cost, roughly,
I think it'll be over 100,000.
our part or total?
No, that would be a grant proposal for about 100,000. It would be 80,000 from the state and 20,000 from the town. Okay, the more interesting thing, again involving money, is an effort. As you remember, we signed off some months ago, or the Select Board had signed off some months ago, concerning a district local technical assistance grant given by PVPC to the town of Southampton. This amounted to $13,000. And the overall objective of this grant was to come up to an idea of how to get some sort of services associated with conservation in the town of Southampton. And they came up with a document shared, I think I think you may have received an electronic version of this. It's a substantial document with various scenarios under the heading of Shared Service Analysis Conservation Agent, with a number of scenarios from hiring a independent conservation agent to sort of getting a consultant to work with us, because the workload of the Conservation Commission, I can attest, is fairly substantial, 2 or 3 days a week now, from phone calls to permitting activities, independent of the stewardship activities that have been outlined here tonight. The objective was to see if this would work, and the shared partner in this would be Easthampton. So Ed, Heather, I, and the mayor of Southampton, and mayor of Easthampton, and a number of administrative people in Easthampton have sat down and looked over this document, and they came up with a scenario. And some characteristics, and I'll just, I better take, yeah, I know what that says. Just has some outline of the potential type of position that could be very useful for the town. And it's characterized by having an 18-hour, a part-time person working for the 2 towns, and the cost of the effort would be 60-40, 60 Easthampton, 40 Southampton. And the first year would be supported by the CIC grant, and it is a tentative proposal trying to get some support for the commission, the Conservation Commission, and we also have had preliminary contact with the Water Commission, and hopefully can get a joint support for a part-time person that could help in the administration of the conservation issues as well as stewardship with the Water Commission. So I think Heather or Ed, do you have any comments to make on this?
At that meeting, it was discussed that it would be a joint effort by both towns, and it would only work if both towns got involved.
That's right.
And, the reason why I was involved with this is, over the years, Charlie and I have been talking about finding some way to assist him with some of his workload with a professional, and this would give us a professional. The first year, if I'm not right, it would be all paid for.
Yeah.
Second, third year, we would have to come up this one day.
Yeah.
Dollar amount of roughly $7,000 to $9,000 per year.
Yep. Exactly.
I think the amounts come to about 9,000.
Now I saw it's going up. Yeah.
There was a calculation that was put together by Easthampton the other day. I believe that I'm not sure if that calculates in any input to certain percentages of stuff they were looking at.
Yeah.
We don't have to worry about health insurance or anything like that, because this person would be part-time by both the standards of Easthampton and Southampton. One of the concerns that was expressed by both communities at the meeting was the fact that neither of us were in the financial position to be able to offer benefits at this time, because that was an additional cost. We had talked about, who would be better situated to be able to host the person, and that would be Easthampton, because they have more tools to utilize. The idea is that this position would be a growing position for the community, so as time went on, if financial situations improved amongst the communities, they could grow the amount of hours, the percentage of who shared what, and everything could move forward from there. The other thing is, because this is again for the CIC grant that you're hearing a lot about, which is the Community Innovative Challenge grant that we'd be putting towards the CIC looks towards shovel-ready projects. We already have a DELTA feasibility study, so that's going to help. The fact that we already have a proposed budget put together, that will help. Theoretically, we could actually have this up and running before the decision from PVPC or from CIC came back in March. And if that was the case, that would help even more that both communities were invested. But the idea is that Easthampton is very strongly passionate about this, and they like to see that our community is invested to doing this and finds a way to do it, regardless of whether we get the CIC funds or not. But the hope is that just the fact that we're invested, that we could get the CIC funds. One of the benefits of getting the CIC funds, in addition to just helping us out for the first year, is that it would give us establishment pieces. So you'd get, a computer, additional technology equipment for this person to go back and forth, a laptop, the software the person would need, any additional equipment that would be helpful for the two communities. Plus, it would ultimately form a blueprint for other communities who may want to do a similar effort in the state.
Is there a timeline?
We need to sign tonight because the application is due Friday.
So if we sign this tonight, does that,
Have to sign it tonight. If you're gonna sign it, we should sign it tonight. Because the deadline's Friday.
does it make us, what's the word?
Does it commit us?
Yeah, thank you. Does it
What does
commit
it
us to
obligate
those?
you to?
Yes.
It's obligating the town to move forward with the grant.
But what happens if we get the grant and then we don't find the rest of the money?
Well, so if the town gets a grant, things don't work out after the grant runs, that's fine. But the CIC really is looking forward to ways to seeing things successful afterwards. Charlie's working very strongly with the water department. I believe he's had a conversation with
Yeah,
Matt Christie.
They seem to have some
And they're
interest here.
interested, and I think they have some capital that they could invest in this piece. I spoke with Tom and had a similar conversation with him pertaining to the piece, that they would be, in need of administrative support, and I think they'd be willing to put some capital behind it as well. I think between those two things, the water department putting some funds behind it, I believe, Charlie, you guys do have a little funds in the Concom.
We haven't discussed it in detail, but potentially that could be possible.
So we'd have a little of that. So being the case, if you figure you can get a decent portion from the Water Commission, some funds from Concom, the cost to the town itself should be about, like 2,000 would be the goal
For the town?
for our town's contribution, if we can get between.
Well, I guess we'd have to discuss that.
Well, if you're talking 9, I would think it'd be 3, 3, and 3.
Well, that's fairly healthy for the Conservation Commission that has only maybe $600 or $700 in annual fees.
That would be, Charlie, I'm right, that would be the second and third year, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And we have to hack
Any
through.
appropriation, if the town does not vote it through, we're not binding on that annual appropriation. But I'd like to see it go through, at least during the time of the grant. But if we don't come up with the money, I don't think we can be held responsible if money's not appropriated.
You don't think we can be held responsible?
No. If it's not
Okay.
appropriated at town meeting, we're not obligated.
Jackie, do you have a question?
Yeah, Charlie, I'm on page 9, and I can see what we're talking about here, but the public can't. So I like the bullets here where you've got planning, preservation, stewardship, regulation, recreation, productive and economic. I mean, could you just explain a little bit about the program so people understand more?
The program for a joint conservation agent?
Yes.
Yes, that's what you're referring to.
Right.
Basically, the 3 major areas that we have need for help is administration of the law, applications, filling out the applications, or having a response to the applications, which is quite a lot of work, as it were, bureaucratic work. The other thing is because uniquely in, I think, Southampton, a small town, we have 600 acres that we're supposedly managing. Nature is managing most of them, but we have improved considerably, I think, some of those parcels. For example, Wolf Hill, again, a Girl Scout project helped that, and the Zipta Farm, and we are working on the Whittemore, and we hope to do the Manhan. And that also, what will descend on us eventually is the Greenway, and working with the Greenway Committee and the Friends of the Greenway, trying to establish all the protocols associated with that. So that's the maintenance part. Another thing that we do is enforcement. We have complaints by various residents of things that have happened in wetland areas, And in typical fashion, enforcement, you have to be rather cautious with all the legal issues associated with that. And that's a fairly cumbersome process. And the advantage Southampton has that we usually only have 1 or 2 enforcements a year because of the nature of the terrain and the population density. That is not the case in Easthampton. Most of their activities enforced because it's been all built out. So those are the 3 major areas: administration, stewardship, and enforcement. And those are the activities that a part-time agent would help, primarily, I think, in administration and filling out some of the paraphernalia needed for enforcement also.
Charlie, wouldn't he be also helping you in your day-to-day evaluation of wetlands and delineation meetings?
These things could be, especially if the person is trained well enough, because you get calls, and you have to go out to these site visits, and you try and orchestrate it with the members of the commission during their free time, and most of them work, and they have other commitments and family and so on. But getting them to, getting a third person or a second person, because it's better than just one person going out looking at it and photographing it and spreading the information via the computer to everyone else. That would be helpful too.
Are there any other questions from the board?
It sounds like this isn't going to hurt us by signing the application. It just gets us through the process. I'd make a motion we sign it.
All those in favor? Aye.
Okay, number 4. I have a number 4. It's not on the agenda, and I may have to go to open time, but basically, we have a tree that belongs to the town that the owners of the property adjacent, the owners of the lot, the parcel, would like removed. It is at 147 Russellville. It belongs to Mr. and Mrs. Ingraham, and there's a very, I can talk about this, it's not quite on the agenda, I thought, but anyway, I'm talking about it. The issue is to have the thing taken down. They have there's some pictures of the site. They have one tree close to the street that belongs to the town. It is providing a considerable amount of debris, but it does belong to the town. They applied to the Conservation Commission. They want to take out more than that amount of tree, and we approved the process, the project. And they also applied to the Mass Endangered Species, MESA Act, People Program, and that was also said they can take down the trees. But one of the trees that's closest to the street belongs to the town, and I think you need a public acknowledgement that the town is accepting of taking that tree down.
Now, there's a bunch of trees in there, so just one is on the...
Yes, the rest of them we have permitted to be taken down, as has MESA. That's right, because they want to expand their house. That's on their property. All of it's on property, but it's right next to the manhand. That's why we're involved.
So would that be our responsibility and cost?
No, none of this is your cost. No. No, this is their cost. I think, Randall, that's their cost.
Charlie, have you talked to Dave Garska, the tree warden?
I have talked to him, and he told me to come here.
So I do have an email from him pertaining to this matter, which regards setting up a public hearing for tree removal. So it is on my purview. As soon as we come up with the documentation, we will get it started.
Okay,
I believe
fine.
there's a process involved.
Is there significant, it is?
You have to have a hearing.
I'm sorry?
You have to have a hearing.
A hearing, okay. All right.
Every tree is due its day in.
Tree warden he has to have a hearing.
Okay. So that's me. I'm finished.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie.
Okay. Yes?
$1,500 he was looking for.
Yeah.
Act on that now?
We have to get some information.
You're gonna
Can't act on it
okay.
yet. I'm going to call for open time for the public in case anyone has anything that they would like to talk about before we move on. Mr. Boyle?
Yeah, I guess I'd like to talk a little bit about the soil billing thing that's going. There's 4 or 5 items on the agenda following this, I think. But anyway, I'm not sure if any of those items are open to the public to talk on tonight. If not, I'd like to talk a little bit about it now.
I would say that I think the direction the board is going to take in regards to the building department is that we're going to make a decision tonight. So if there's anything that you would like to add before that time, I'm not anticipating taking comments from the public at that point.
Well, anyway, since the last meeting, some of the things have changed. The Hoyle agreement or contract that we're talking about. Since then, the Hoyle treasurer has resigned his post and went to a different job. There's not much question that everybody knows that. He made the first proposal a couple of months ago to bring the contract forward. He was here the other night, and strangely, it was the night before he resigned the following day. He seems to be a certainly important part of this contract that's forward to contact the city council over there. He wore a lot of hats in the treasurer's office, I know that. He was probably somewhat involved with Heather on his negotiations and stuff like that. He put a lot of work into it. But anyway, the reason I say that, it seems like it's going to be a hard job for any new people making contacts with these people involved. The other thing I have is John Martha brought it up one night when there was an application about experience. Well, anyway, from the first agreement that was put forward a few months ago, Hoyle was going to supply a certified local building inspector to the town of Southampton. If you read the new contract that was supplied last week, I believe, or 2 weeks ago, if you read that page 3 of that contract, that takes away that thought, because in that contract, they put an or condition in there that left it for a person only with qualifications to take the test with little or no experience to be coming to Southampton. So that really cuts down their salary aspect of that individual that could be here. So needless to say, I'm not sure where this is going. It had a question mark on that thing, but whatever it is, to answer your question, you could get no experience.
Yep.
But the other question, the other thing of it is not long ago you appointed Rich back to be the acting commissioner, which he's always done a good job. You also have Tom Quinlan on the agenda for something tonight. If you had both of those in the mix, certainly that could be a good answer to the town to move forward with and just try to eliminate this Hoyle thing. Actually, by the treasurer quitting, it just made a bad situation worse. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, sir?
Patrick Mann at Pleasant Street. Following Mr. Boyle on this one, has to do with the meeting concerning the inspections and so on. What I was looking for within that meeting was showing me some type of net benefit financially if we were going to go with the Holyoke to the taxpayer in the town of Southampton. And I wasn't seeing that at all. And that, if you're going to go into contract, it should be a net benefit. And with that being said, you'll be discussing later on tonight.
Yes, sir. It's right up next.
Will the public allow any commentary?
I'm not anticipating any public input at that point. However, if the need comes up, I'm not opposed to it.
Can I just answer?
Yeah.
The net benefit, the information that came from the treasurer and the accountant was the direct costs that we would have for the building inspector, and it netted out to X amount of dollars. What wasn't included is all the additional time when the person's on vacation, out sick, at meetings and all that. That was fully covered. That's where roughly the profit came in, about $10,000 a year, not profit, savings. So you saw a small snippet of what the costs were, but not the full savings on the other side. So the information was accurate, it just wasn't all there. So that's where we came up with savings originally. But again, the conversation is going to go different at I believe, when we discuss it, so that's less of an issue now. But I just wanted to answer your question.
Is there anyone that has any issues that are not coming up on the agenda that they would like to address during open time for the public? Seeing none, we will move on to continued business, the building department. We have an intermunicipal agreement for the building department, and really what we need here is some direction from the Board of Selectmen. We had a public meeting last week, and I think the public had made some very good points. I think their opinion was clearly stated on the topic, and I guess at this point we have three choices. We can either partner with Holyoke and move forward with that. We can move forward with Mr. Quinlan, who the board had decided to hire previously, or we can look at other candidates and move forward that way. But at this point, I need to know where the board wants to go.
Okay, I mean, the Holyoke agreement sounded good in the beginning, and I think hindsight says the process was kind of flipped over, so, we didn't quite do the process the way I think we would do it now, so that's, our apologies on that, but it wasn't out of any intent. And I think as we go along and we look at the relationship with that department, originally I didn't want to change the plumbing or the electrical inspector. To me, we had people in place, leave the people there. I was looking at the vacant position because to me, we need to save a lot of money this year. And wherever there's a vacant position, we need to look at it to see if that's the best option just to fill it. And the decision may be to fill it or not to fill it, but we have to look at the options. But as we went along the process, I know my point of view is I don't think the agreement with Holyoke is as, I would just say that I wouldn't agree to go forward with it from my point of view.
My comment is basically the same as I said last week. I know the town fathers are trying to look where they can find money to make the budget process more palatable, but this was one option. It came in through the door, and at the last minute before we were in the process of hiring Mr. Quinlan. And I think we would have been damned if we did, damned if we don't, if we didn't look at it. We looked at it. But what I found that I was having a problem with is there was no enforcement. When I say enforcement, Rich, as a building inspector, he came on as basically our first full-time inspector. And half his time, when it was originally set up, was for enforcement. And what I mean by enforcement, going around and checking on people building without permits, verifying that things are done correctly, and looking to see that the public was following the bylaws that the town had applied. I didn't see any of that in there. Because of that, I was opposed to it then, and I'm opposed to it now.
I would like to say that last week's meeting was very eye-opening for me. I appreciate every person that came and let us know how they felt about it. I think the process that we used didn't work out so well, and that going forward, anytime we think about things like this, we need to change the process that we use. I don't think going forward with Holyoke is the right choice for Southampton. I think there are some other avenues that we can explore to solve some of the problems that we're having. And at this moment, I'm opposed to moving forward with Holyoke. I would accept a motion from the board at this point if there's no further discussion.
Paul, I'd like to make a motion.
I'll second it.
I'd like to make a motion.
PSP, sorry.
So we have a motion to drop Holyoke's proposal. Is there a second? Yes?
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Thank you. So then we have some other options, and the board needs to decide where they want to go. The position is open until filled, and I know that some applications have trickled in for the position. We also have Tom Quinlan, who's we've been in contact with and is still interested in the position, we had decided to hire before this situation happened. So I need to know from the board, would you like to continue to look at applications and find someone new, or would you like to move forward with Mr. Quinlan?
When Mr. Quinlan came in, he had received a letter to come in and to be appointed the night that Hoyt brought the proposals in. And I don't want to change from that. I'd like to recommend that we extend the job to Tom Quinlan. I think this will be the second time. And to get him in here to negotiate the contract.
Is that your motion?
That's my
To
motion.
move forward with Mr. Quinlan. In order to continue talking about this now, I need a second. We can discuss it if I have a second.
Okay, I'll second it for discussion.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Yeah, my discussion is, I think we have an opportunity here with an open position to look at better ways of doing it, if there are indeed better ways. I think the way the budget, and Heather can come up with a number of how much we have to find this year, it was great to see everybody come out and give their opinions, because that's what we want. But anytime we look at an opening or cost saving some other department, people are going to get groups out here and say, no, we don't want to do it in our department, we don't want to do it in this department. But at the end of the year, we're charged with saving that money. And I was reviewing the budget year to date so far this afternoon, and there's a couple of departments, the line items are over. So we're going to have to make up that money too. So we have to make up money. I mean, that's what we're here for, and we could be nice and say, sure, hire somebody, look for the next opportunity, but how many opportunities do we have? And Mr. Quinlan's a nice person. He has good construction background. When we talked to him, his only building inspector background was May of that year, so he had like a couple of months. So he was very new to that type of position. I mean, from my point of view, Rich Olesic, I believe, unless he's changed it, said that he would stay on for a while to give us an opportunity to keep looking at other options, be it other candidates or another, town, Easthampton or Northampton or something. But it's an opportunity that if we let go by, we won't have again. Because I am not in favor of terminating somebody to make that opportunity. I want to look at the opportunities that present themselves when somebody leaves or something like that.
Well, let me ask you this. What has changed since your interviews? I know you abstained on the last one because you knew the family, but what has changed with Mr. Quinlan? Because I think he was our #1 candidate at the time after the process, and we forwarded him a letter to come in and negotiate that particular night. So I do believe the motion was already voted on and carried at that particular time. And this is just a continuation of that process. Now, I think he's capable. I think he's energetic. I think he can do the job. He has been working for Greenfield as well as Easthampton in that capacity. And someone's going to start somewhere. And he showed me he had the energy and drive to do that job.
Yeah, and I'm not doubting that. I'm just saying once we fill the position permanently, the opportunity's gone.
That can happen tomorrow. Something comes in better with somebody who wants to leave.
But we have a budget deficit that we need to start looking at. We're, 4 months, 3 months into the fiscal year.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't going to disappear, and if we get halfway into the budget, we got to do twice as much cutting to make the same
Well,
amount.
what do you think is going to happen if we don't put somebody in there?
Again, if Rich said that he would stay for a while, it would give us several weeks, a month or so to find out what else is out there. I mean, if you got some thoughts on how to save the money elsewhere, sure.
I don't know if it's such a conversation about saving at this point as let's figure out how to increase our revenue and maybe offset what we're losing. I think that's a whole other conversation that was brought up a few times last week, was let's see how we can increase the revenue instead of. I think we're going around and around and around here, but in all reality, you're going to get applications, you're going to have to screen them, and then you're going to have to hope that they have the qualifications, and then you're going to wait longer to see if you get someone else. When we have somebody who has excellent references, who has a building inspector, more than one, who's willing to whatever, mentor them or that they can report to, I don't think that stalling at this point and continuing looking is going to save us any money in the long run. I think it's time to move forward with this. And I support hiring Mr. Quinlan.
I don't think stalling is the proper word, because I think our charge is to figure out how to run the town within the budget. And it was pretty clear from 2/3 of the town that we've got to save the money.
I don't think that I don't think you're going to save any money by hiring somebody. I think you're going to hopefully stay within your budget and at the same time look at revenue to help the budget.
We have a budget that was passed. He has to stay in that budget. And it's up to us to negotiate an agreement that keeps him well within that budget.
I guess what I'm saying is that if you folks have looked at the revenue or the expense sheets to date, you're going to see several line items that are over by quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And that's only a quarter of the way through the year. So those departments are going to have to make cuts, or we're going to have to find more funding. Charlie was just here.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you on that. But the point is, we have these permits coming through the door. They need to be addressed. We have an obligation to get that done.
Rich wouldn't be able to do that to give us some time?
Well, I don't know all the problems with retirement with that regard, but there is an issue with how many hours he can work.
He can do the difference between what he retired at and what he had before.
Right, but that still doesn't change my way. I mean, the other half of the issue is that we need to hire somebody, whether it's Rich or somebody else, to be the commissioner in that period to oversee his work until he passes his license.
Or if we hire somebody that doesn't have the license, or are we going to hire with a stipulation that he or she must obtain that license within X amount of time?
I think we had a discussion, a time frame when he had to get it.
There's a time frame, there is a stipulation, and the cost to the commissioner is taken out of his pay until which time he has completed all of his tests. So there is no extra cost.
I'm not concerned with the extra cost. I'm concerned with the ability to do the job that Ed was saying that is a very important thing to do.
Heather?
So just a couple comments on this to keep in mind. With Rich currently, we have to remember that we are stuck financially, so that we can only go up to either a certain number of hours or a certain amount. At this point, there was actually a week where he did, according to our administrative report, approximately 26 inspections in 1 week. Now, if he's limited to like 900 and something hours max, that's starting to push it. Plus, remember, we're paying $35 per inspection. So that's jacking up our costs really quick, really fast. So that's also getting us to the other number faster. The other thing is, Rich right now, he's not doing zoning for us. We're not paying him to do zoning for us. So for the past couple months, we haven't had zoning enforcement like we regularly did. So the longer we go without having a full-time person in there, the longer we go without having zoning enforcement. The discussions we've had with Tom Quinlan were something of the sorts as follows. The budget line item is for $50,000. So at this point, you figure, I think I did the calculation out, so the biweekly installments would be $1,912 subject to all the deductions. You have to subtract about $200 from that weekly, which would be $1,712, because you figure you need to pay a building commissioner $100 per week. He's already conversed with his current building commissioner over in Easthampton to see if he would supervise him. He already has an established relationship with him. They've been working together closely. He's familiar with what he can do, and I think he would help him grow the most. And that is Joseph Biden. I'm not even going to try. The gentleman who works over in Easthampton, who has got a more challenging last name than I do.
I mean, Tom Quinlan is a very nice guy, and that's not my issue. I don't think he would do a bad job whatsoever. He'd be fine. I'm just saying there's an opportunity, should we look at it? If you folks think that we can find revenues in other areas, I'll acquiesce on this one with the footnote that when the hard decisions have to come, we're going to have to make them.
I share your concerns, because we've had this discussion about looking at the annual, the weekly and monthly reports as far as department is concerned. I know it's going to be a challenging year. We'll be talking about that later on in other issues. But the point is, we need to resolve this case once and for all, and I think that by moving forward tonight and giving Mr. Quinlan the job, we need to establish this and move on. And then address the fee structure based on, that's not going up tonight, is it?
Well, it is on here, but I think if you're going to move ahead with Tom Quinlan, then you might want to have his input.
But I do believe that the fee structures I've seen that, not the lowest, but we're far from the highest. So we need to look at that fee structure and see how we can generate more revenue.
In order to move it forward, I'll go along with the motion.
So I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Just for the record, the motion is to offer this job to Tom Quinlan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent.
Just to follow up, administrative paperwork ended here. So the next question is, does the board wish to speak with him again, or do they feel that they can hone out the details tonight so that they can offer him and he can set aside starting date of November 1st?
And just to answer that part of it, I would like to talk to him face to face.
Okay, but just so the board is aware, Mass General laws, we are not he is not in one of the positions that contracts are within the rounds of. So contract is not something that legally we can provide.
So we have to give him an hourly staple?
No, we don't have to do an hourly stipend, we just can't offer him a contract.
Okay.
We can do a job offer letter, but we can't do a contract. So we can provide his employment's conditional upon.
And then he'd be required to follow policy, procedures, bylaws, and everything.
Correct.
So Heather does have a letter drafted, and I know that our next meeting is the annual town meeting, and then that puts us very close to November 1st. And so please don't kill me when I say, maybe we could meet with him next week.
Fine with that.
I know it's an off week, but in an effort to keep this moving along, if that's the only thing on our agenda, we could keep this going.
When does the board wish to do so?
Say Tuesday, since we're kind of in that.
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Can we do it earlier?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
What time?
What time?
5:30?
That's fine. Fine for me.
And do we feel it needs to be televised, or do we not feel it needs to be televised? We need to let Paul know if it needs to be.
Why don't you come in? Okay. Tuesday at 5:30, we'll meet with Mr. Plummer. Okay. Excellent. So the next items are the review of the fee schedule and the review of the payment schedule for the building department and the inspectors. My feeling is that maybe we need to have some input from all of those people during that conversation. And I haven't had a chance to look at the fees in other surrounding towns, and I think maybe we should put that conversation off. Anybody have any objections to that?
Only have a meeting next week, but the regular scheduled meeting, and
That's
we
the
can
town
take
meeting.
comments from the public.
It's the town meeting.
Town meeting and.
You can't do it at the town meeting.
No. Next.
After the town meeting?
Correct.
Is November 4th?
November 4th, okay.
Have them
So,
come in.
so if you could invite building inspectors, electrical inspectors, plumbing inspectors, anybody who might be involved
Yes,
to
ma'am.
come talk with us about that.
And
Hopefully
they
bring
can
some
bring-
ideas.
Yes, and can you let them know why, and so they come with some, topics for conversation?
Yeah. Make it a lot easier if they come up with the ways to do it than us.
Yeah.
Excellent, okay. So now we are moving on to item 4.2, Old County Road, Old Long Pond Road, the road usage and resident concerns. We need to have a formal position from the town. This is continued from August 12th, if you remember, and a piece of land in Westfield, and the sole purpose of getting there would be a road in Southampton. So there's really two choices here. We can either go ahead with that, or Southampton can be opposed to the project. But we need a clear direction from the Board of Selectmen.
Did you receive any letters from department heads?
We did receive one from the highway department, which is in the packet. We also received an email from the planning board.
And
Did you-
I'm pretty sure both of
It's
them
in
say
the
it's not a good idea.
Yeah, the planning board.
We can read them into the record if you like.
Yeah, go, please.
The one from the planning board says, "The planning board discussed this last night, and we also have concerns. In the ANR process, a petition can only be denied if it does not dimensionally comply with zoning or there is not adequate access. A Form A also cannot have conditions applied to it. If the Westfield Planning Board approves this, it cannot stipulate access requirements. It is unclear to us how they could approve the plan with frontage on a municipal road and then apply conditions to not use that road for access. Also, we think that it is confusing that lots in Westfield need to be accessed from another community. We are recommending this not be approved. Please forward our concerns to the Westfield Planning Board along with the others." And then the one from the Highway Department was dated back in September from Randall. It says, "It has been brought to my attention that there has been a plan for a 12-lot subdivision proposed and under review by the Westfield Planning Board will be located in Westfield along the town line in Southampton. I understand that Old County Road in Southampton is proposed as the means of access to the subdivision instead of Old Long Pond Road in Westfield. Old County Road is a narrow, one-lane paved road that transitions to dirt at the Westfield line and meanders along the town line before terminating in a turnaround at the last house on the road. The town plows snow from the entire length of the road, and although I am unable to find anything to confirm, I believe this to be a town road. In addition to being narrow, the road has a blind hill near the intersection with Middle Road and 2 blind corners along its length. At present, the single-lane road is less than ideal, and I expect complaints from the public to increase with increased traffic volume. I also suspect that a minimum cost to maintain the road would increase, and that the increased volume may even dictate that the road be widened and/or re-engineered. I don't think that I need to point out that anything that increases cost or liability to the town is not in our best interest to support, and I don't feel that the burden should be on the taxpayers of Southampton to pay for this work. My suggestion would be for the town to oppose any plan to utilize Old County Road as access for this Westfield subdivision, and instead suggest that Old Long Pond Road be finished or extended and used as it is a more suitable road maintained by Westfield and would presumably provide the city of Westfield, emergency services, and waste haulers better access to the proposed Westfield subdivision.
Any questions?
Comment if you want.
Sure.
When we started this, I hadn't seen it, so I took a ride down there a couple of weeks. Luckily, I took my 4-wheel drive Jeep. I mean, I was going down the road, and I thought I was literally beyond where I was supposed to be, but then I saw more houses, and I kept continuing. I mean, I can't imagine how we don't have to do major work to that road to get people in and out. And I think that was your correspondence. I think he's right on it. And more importantly, what the folks say from the planning board is, how can Westfield allow a subdivision without providing access to it? Just doesn't make sense. So I'm 100% opposed to it.
Is there any discussion, other discussion on this? I would accept a motion if not.
I believe we also have the fire chief and police chief. I don't know if they have any commentary on this.
Is there any other information other than we are opposed to this that you would like to add, chiefs?
Yeah, I certainly, just as fire chief, do have concerns with the width of that road. It is gravel. It would be a challenge to get up there with large pieces of equipment. I would not recommend that we add more houses down the end of a difficult road to get down now. Especially if they're, servicing from Westfield, or should service from
Now,
Westfield.
would we have to respond also if they
Well, if there's
requested?
no access from Westfield, I would imagine it would be in the folks that are living there, they would want a response that would get there in a timely manner, and that may fall on us. So I imagine we would be part of the solution to a fire in that area.
Chief, just let you know, if they wanted, if what their proposal was to abandon Old Long Pond Road, put a gate on it, and give the various cities a key to get in there in emergency.
Yeah, that could be a nightmare if you had a house fire going on and you were trying to get multiple pieces of apparatus down into that location.
Mhm.
There's no passing. It would be very difficult to have any kind of successful operations at the end of that road. So, fire department does have concerns.
Thank you.
Just curious, has anybody come out in support of this that you've heard about?
Not that I have heard.
Developer.
Well,
No, but not anyone
doesn't
that
have an
lives on
interest.
the road that I'm aware of.
The trust was even looking at the last planning board meeting in Westfield to go back to the negotiation table to look at other possibilities, including using Old Long Pond Road. But initially, the settlement had to come out to play that Old Long Pond Road was off the table. When we sat down just with Westfield, the trust, and the residents of Old Long Pond Road.
And plus it has power lines going right through there, so that's, makes it real attractive too.
So I would accept a motion to be opposed to the project
And create a letter.
and create a letter.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second? Thanks. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah,
One
What's that?
abstention.
One abstention.
yeah, I just would like to know more from the contractor. I have more information on it before I abstain.
Next, we have goals for town administrator. Heather, do you want to talk about your goals as the town administrator?
Sure, I'd love to. So a few weeks ago, I submitted a letter with a review of what I have accomplished so far and also a list of some goals that I had. I'm just trying to see if I have my list here. Did I put it down in mine? Oh, it's on there. Here we go. Okay. So I outlined essentially 9 different goals. The first one is the website. I've actually been working very closely with John Fitzpatrick, VJ Patel, and Art Lawrence. We are working on getting the new website up and running. It's going to be a WordPress site hosted by GoDaddy. We are working on a template that has been utilized on the town of Berlin. It's a very simplistic template. It looks like Wikipedia. It's very easy to utilize and access. We actually end up getting the idea from my town government, the application that Janine had spoke about earlier, off of that website. So we are going ahead with that, and we are hoping by the end of this fiscal year to have that up and running. The next goal I have is to formalize the Board of Selectmen procedures, to work with the board on that. Right now, we don't have any procedures or policies really in place for the board meetings. Some boards have Robert's Rules of Order, some boards have other parliamentary rules or other things in place just to help govern the board and decide, how they're going to take things as they come across the board. One thing I'd like to do is look at other communities and see what they're doing, smaller towns and places around us, and go sit in some of the meetings and see how they deal with things, see how even they handle open time for the public, because I know everyone does it different. The other thing I'd like to do is help formalize the Board of Selectmen meeting room meetings. So one of the complaints we get from a lot of residents at home is they can't always hear the meetings. We've spoken with ECAT several times, and they suggested we need to get another microphone, set it up a little bit differently in the room so folks can actually have one centralized location to talk so everyone can hear. We actually do have funds available in the money that goes aside for our public access station, so we can utilize those funds in order to purchase the microphone and what we need for that equipment to be able to do that. Dispatch, one of the projects we're working on right now is potential of regionalizing dispatch. I had worked initially with John Lumbra, and since he has left his current post, or major part of his post in Holyoke, I've taken over the project, so I communicate with everyone. We have another follow-up meeting this month. We're looking to apply for a DLTA grant just to do a feasibility study in the late winter, early spring with PVPC. The other thing is budget process. Division of Local Services from DOR had interviewed most people from the Board of Selectmen, the Finance Committee, Treasurer, the Accountant's Office, myself, and they actually had put together a report of some revisions to the budget process that they recommended. That report was just completed today. It will be emailed to us in the next few days, and we should have hard copies for everybody by the end of the week, and it will be available to the public. We will put it on the website, Facebook, everything else. I'd like to work on doing the audit earlier. I had already talked to Melanson and Heath to try to get everything rolling so we can have our audit begun earlier than it was last year. The goal is, January, February time, have things rolling for the FY14 audit. That way it allows us, if we have any problems, any issues, we can resolve them.
Where are we now?
When do we have it this year? We didn't have it until after I was here for a month or two. I would say April, May.
Okay.
It was much later. And remembering it has to be done by the end of June, so it's kind of pressing if any documents are outstanding. One of the things I had looked at with other communities is some communities have town administrators chats, they have town administrator public access channel show, or they have a town administrator page. Some of them even do an annual walk. The idea is some way to engage with the public a little bit more, to get their concerns, to be able to talk to them. One of the things we've...
I thought you meant like a fundraiser walk.
No.
I'm like, what? Like if people are going to fundraise and take a walk?
I think it was, I don't know if it was Wilmington or it was another community with a W, but they actually had an annual town administrator walk where what they do is whatever topics folks want to talk about, that's what they do. Once a year is they get together and they have a conversation with the town administrator and they go for a walk, like on the bike trail over in Easthampton. It starts in Southampton. then it goes into Easthampton. But the idea is to be more available to the public so they can communicate these things. It also gives names to folks and answers, so people have the answers they're looking for, so folks are relying hopefully less on Mass Live and gossip and other pieces of information, but hopefully also so the words can get out. So if people have questions, that they ask them, and that the information's out there. That's my goal on that one. One of them is just completing town administrator certification from STAM. That's just going to conferences and trainings, which I have so many to fill the book. And then completing the chief procurement officer certification over the next few years, because it just takes a while of experience to earn it.
You have started that though, right?
I have. Just by being it alone, I've started logging time. But unfortunately, it's one of those you have to log the time before you get anywhere, and the trainings fill up fast. But those are the goals I've set for myself. Does the board have any additional ones for me for the community, or?
I really, oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
I really, the website is something that I feel really strongly about. I think it needs to be more user-friendly. And I know that you're working hard on that, but I really feel like that needs to be a priority. And I also like the one about formalizing the Board of Selectmen procedures. And I think we're getting better at that, but it would be nice if there was one place for people to stand to make comments. I know that it's hard to hear it at home. So I think that we could definitely improve on the way the meetings are run and how the public gets that information and hears that information.
I think these are good goals. The only thing I can add to it is I'd like to see you keeping apprised what's going on with our state reps and keeping them apprised what's going on here, whether the state senator or the rep, and try to keep them within your loop on a monthly or quarterly basis.
One of them was documenting policies, which I know you've only been here 6 months, and that's one of your goals, to make sure we have the policies, because we always run into little snags where's that documented. So if that's on the goals in the next 6 to 12 months, I think that would be good. And we talked about notifying, if possible, department heads of something that's coming up on the next agenda. I know that can be a pain in the neck, but I think that'll help the select board to have the right people here.
Jackie, anything to add?
I'm just wondering, a lot of times when people are watching us, they don't see what we see. So, without letting them know, I mean, it's hard for them to understand, like in my project, like just what happened tonight with Charlie when he came up. Is there a way that we can?
Yes. With My Town Government, there's now an option where we can upload documents that are outside of the agenda. If we upload the documents, we used to do it in Haverhill after a period of time, people can actually view the entire packet, and then they can either see the information electronically, or should they desire to print out 200 pages, they're welcome to do so.
No, but they could go along with us and,
Yep.
and view it. See, that would be great if we could do that.
Good goals, Heather. Nilda?
I have a goal for Heather.
You have a goal?
I have a goal for you. Can you try to
Is that gold?
speak a goal?
Oh, okay.
To speak a little slower, because when she speaks so rapidly, it seems like the words just are a continuous statement. And so it would be helpful. Some of the things that she said during her review, I was not able to. It wasn't, she doesn't articulate, so that would be helpful.
And I will help you with that goal by not giving you a time limit going forward.
Oh, wait a minute.
Thank you. Randall, are you back there?
Yeah.
Would you like to come up front and talk about your goals with us? Quick, you have 3 minutes, just kidding.
Is this in here? Are Randall's goals in here?
It is there, yep.
Under what?
4.4.
4.4?
I had a couple of goals in the letter I submitted. It gave me a little feedback on them last time, whether or not we can do them or not, but I was interested to hear it also being worked on last time. And I just wanted to know if you guys have anything you want me to work on the next year going forward.
Well, Ed he had said we need to get out in the field more.
Yep.
So that would be a great place to start, some field work. So aside from telling people to call me when they see you on the side of the road, I think we'll have to hope that you're working on that. You have to refresh my memory.
Ed had asked me to, more time in the field to develop employees' expectations on projects. More time on subdivisions. Push subcontractors a little more. Do things on the projects going faster. Push forward state aid projects. And establish a rapport with Mass Highway and Tri-County Superintendents Association.
Is that last one something where you go to a meeting, that
Yes.
kind of stuff?
I think so.
So it's hard for me to say what's most important because some of these goals are not so measurable. Where, you know, if we have a new website, then I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess some of this we're gonna have to just take your word for. Do you know what I mean? Like, how are we gonna measure it is my question. How do I measure those goals for you?
When I gave him those goals were things that, not that he was lacking in, he concentrated more effort in those areas because, you know, he's only been there less than a year and he needs to get up to stuff quick. And these are areas that I saw that he's working on, but he's got to put more effort into them. And, you know, and he understands that, but as far as measuring them, he's got to spend some time and do these things, and they'll promote themselves with benefits for the town.
So I guess my comment would be, why don't you take those things and let us know how you think you're doing on them going forward? I mean, I don't know how to hold you accountable for being more aware of, you know, the people in your field. I'm not sure how to do that. Anybody?
I've got one comment, and it may be because of the structure, Randall, but we're talking about budgets before, and a couple of your line items are over where they should be now. But again, maybe because of the structure, how you have winter roads, but general highway wages, for instance, are at 35, and road machinery are 37, and they should both be at about 25, so.
Well,
I just want to make sure you're watching the budgets and.
Well, that's because the bulk of it's all general highway right now.
Yep. So it'll turn over
There's
to
only
winter roads.
17 weeks in general highway, you're about 15, right, probably right now. So percentage-ly, they're gonna be off, but going into next spring, they'll be close.
Okay, so that's why I was wondering. So I guess my goal is make sure you stay within that budget, so you don't know what the winter's gonna be
And you
like.
do spend a lot of your money, I don't know if the expense items are over, but you do spending a lot of money this time of year with contractors and stuff like that. Those are big dollar items.
Just road and machinery expenses was over for expenses.
We've had a lot of breakdowns.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. I'm sure there's good reasoning behind it, but we're gonna be stuck where, you know, we don't have extra money.
Jack, did you have a question?
Okay, I'm coming from a resident, and I have a pothole at the end of my street, and I want to tell you about it. Is there, you can call the highway department anytime, but how long does it usually take? Like, if I call tomorrow, and is there like a timeline, or do you get in line, or how many do you have ahead of you, or
I
what's
try to
the?
get out and take a look at it, and if it's something that I feel that the town to be liable. Once I'm informed of it, if somebody's car breaks, then the town's liable after that. So I go out, take a look at it, and kind of triage it. Is it that severe where it needs to be taken care of immediately? I mean, that's, every complaint we get is a constant triage. So, Heather had me start a pothole log, just so that we have, backup and tracking and documentation of when the complaint came in and when it's been addressed, so.
How many do you deal with, how many do you fix a week? I mean, what's the average?
It depends on the time of year. First thing in the spring when the frost peaks start melting, we spent about 3 months every day with the crew on pothole patrol. I had one on East Street and one on Russellville in Bower. There are 2 worst potholes right now, but they happen all around town. I hope it'll be a little better
Well, I think just increasing your job knowledge and doing the best you can at this point, learning everything you can is most important. Any other questions or concerns for Randall? Okay, moving on. We have item 5.1, the mutual aid agreement, and we need a signature. There's a letter in your packet from the mayor of Easthampton. Chief, do you want to speak about this? I think at this point, we are the only town in the area to not have signed the mutual aid agreement.
No, there's a number of towns that haven't signed on to it.
Okay.
My understanding is there's at least 11 other communities that have not.
And we've always been a part of that agreement, though. Is that true?
We've always had mutual aid agreements with all of our surrounding communities.
And what is the hesitation or not of signing or not signing this agreement at this point?
I wouldn't call it a hesitation. The concern that I aired is in my notice to the board, which you should have got a copy of. And that surrounds one section of that agreement, which is a self-activation of police authority by any police officer from any community who's also on in the mutual aid agreement. What, as written, it allows to occur is that any police officer from any community who's on duty in Southampton can enforce any law that they feel has been violated or broken without notifying us in advance. I like to know what's going on in town. I like my officer on duty to know, what's happening. The language in this current agreement allows for prompt notification to us that another community has made an arrest in Southampton, or as soon as practical. The current and the pre-existing mutual aid agreements have required a notification to us that they observed a criminal offense and do we want them to take action against it. And that then invokes a mutual aid agreement, and then that officer from another community is acting as an agent of Southampton. As written, this agreement will allow any other police officer to make an arrest in Southampton without notifying us, but notifying us as soon as practical or prompt. So, as I indicated, there's a couple of ways that I believe that I can address my concerns with notification, to those departments, and that should help to alleviate that concern.
How long would it take you to address that concern with them and get an answer back so we can either agree to sign this or send it back?
Well, what my response to that would be, Ed, is that I would notify in writing my preference of not having outside officers just stop vehicles for any minor motor vehicle offense. I would prefer that outside agencies, if they happen to be in Southampton on duty, that it amount to a significant public safety threat. I don't want outside agencies stopping cars for taillights, stopping cars for speeding, minor offenses. My concerns with that is that it could then result in a arrest that we may not be in a position to have to deal with the rest of that time. As the board knows, we have limited staff on duty. And so the untimely arrest being affected by an outside department and being thrust upon us might not work for us at that time.
The liability is on their department. Am I right?
That's another area. The liability, for example, if another agency makes a bad arrest, and then they notify us, so they make an arrest, they notify us that they've made an arrest. After they've handcuffed somebody and put them in the cruiser, their cruiser, they notify us that they've made an arrest. We respond to the scene. If our supervisors decide that there was enough probable cause, or perhaps maybe it was a bad arrest, then we would be in a position to decline the further prosecution of that arrest. We obviously don't want to assume the liability of another agency making a bad arrest.
I mean, I saw the contract, Heather gave it to me. If by not signing it, we have no mutual aid, am I right, with surrounding towns?
Well, there's a mutual aid agreement in existence with all the surrounding communities. Recently,
Well, why do we have a new one?
the new mutual aid agreement that's being proposed is based on existing agreements in other parts of the state that further clarifies some mutual aid agreement issues. The main change in it is that it allows this ability for outside agencies to make arrests in our community.
When you say, outside agencies, I mean, you're talking about
Non-Southampton police officers.
but police officers rather than a state police, they can do that anyways, or
Right.
the FBI's of the world, they can do that. So it's just the local police departments?
Right.
Now-
So what this would then allow is that if a neighboring community's police officer was in Southampton for some reason and they saw any offense against the law, they can enforce that. They're then required to notify us, and then the continued prosecution of that would go through Southampton's jurisdiction. So it doesn't expand the arrest authority of another local agency whereby they now have statewide powers or are like state police and can enforce laws of the Commonwealth in Southampton and then bring that person that they've arrested back to the next community. That's not the way it works. All of that would go through us and we would assume the liability.
Now, is this just for active police officers? Or can they,
Police officer with police power.
Police officers on duty.
just on duty? Okay. So, let me ask you a question. Now, if somebody's speeding a little, got a broken taillight, missing whatever, can a police officer from, say, Easthampton come into Southampton for that type of breaking the law, or does it have to be a
No.
major?
They could not. And for a minor traffic offense like speeding or broken taillight, they would have to have knowledge of an arrestable offense or believe that an arrestable offense is being committed in order for them to continue pursuing that vehicle out of their jurisdiction and into our jurisdiction.
Would this agreement allow them to do anything, though?
Yes.
Okay.
So my area of concern is strictly limited to liability and what's best for Southampton. I don't want to get handed a bill of goods in the middle of the night by someone who made a bad arrest, and we don't agree with that. Circumstances of the probable cause, and in fact, the document that you were provided by Easthampton exemplifies my concern. I don't know if you had a chance to look at that, but there is a brief in there in a ruling concerning an arrest that Easthampton had made on County Road. That was a bad arrest. That arrest was for a shoplifting that occurred in Easthampton. Under Massachusetts law, if a shoplifting doesn't occur in the presence of a police officer, it then becomes what is referred to as a past misdemeanor, and it's not arrestable. You have to summon somebody in for that. In that particular instance, again, it exemplifies my concern. They followed a car all the way down Norman Drive in Southampton before it was stopped. They contacted us by radio one time. The dispatcher didn't respond. They contacted us again. The dispatcher did respond, told them to go ahead, and Easthampton never responded back to us. We then learned that they had stopped the car. By the time we got down there, the person was already under arrest. This new mutual aid agreement isn't going to fix that type of a problem. That was a bad arrest, and we would not perpetuate that type of an arrest. We would at that point tell them, it's a bad arrest, sorry, but we're not assuming the responsibility of that, and you're going to have to let the guy go.
The bigger picture of this whole thing, you have a mutual aid agreement. Obviously, the other one's got a drop dead date on it that you're working under right now. Am I right?
Well, only by the unprecedented act of the Easthampton police chief who rescinded that. I've never seen anything like that before in all my years. We still have current existing mutual aid agreements with all the surrounding towns around us. I'm not quite sure why he felt it necessary to take that maneuver. So currently, he took the unprecedented step of rescinding our current one. There was, when this mutual aid agreement was distributed, it was distributed with an attachment A for those communities who wanted to join the mutual aid agreement now. It was also distributed with an attachment B for those communities who would like to join the mutual aid agreement at a later date. And it appears now, in the past 2 weeks, attachment B has been taken off the table, and we're essentially being force-fed under the threat of rescinding the existing agreement between the two towns, which, you know, means that we can't reciprocate, but we still have active agreements with the rest of the communities.
But with Easthampton as such a figure, as such a town that's close proximity to us, and we've had in the past really good working relationships too. My feel, the greater good here is not to resolve this issue, and the chiefs have to get together and resolve this issue once and for all. I do think the heart and soul of that contract has very good intentions, otherwise you would have told us about them. But right now, there's a section in there you're uncomfortable with. My feeling is before we even consider it, and I know you've been working on this since what, May? April?
I was first received a copy of this in, I think, the second week of July.
Okay. I don't want to not have mutual agreements with our surrounding towns, especially in police and fire. We're a small town. We need this help. I remember being in front of this board when you had incidents on John. You needed all the help you could get. I don't want this to be a roadblock so you don't get the help when you need it. Now, you need to evaluate the pros and cons of this part, but resolve this, and then come back and say, I can get this resolved.
Well, as I had indicated in the email to the board, I believe that there is a way to address the concerns I have.
Well, who is the head of this agreement? Easthampton?
No, nobody's ahead of it. It's a regional.
Well, who do you go to resolve this? The regional meeting on this, or?
What do you mean by?
So there's got to be some group of people that put the verbiage together and put this in there, and they must have good reasons to do this, and there should be somebody you got to talk to resolve your concerns.
As I said, I believe that the resolution to that is achievable by the continued communications with that department after this is signed.
So you want us to sign it?
I recommended to the board that I recommend to Heather, they go to the board for your review, and if you wish to send it to town council, if you wanted it reviewed further.
Well,
I also indicated that I had believed that there's a way to resolve some of my concerns.
I mean, I'm looking at all these other towns. A lot of these towns, I'm sure, if we made a call and find out they were reviewed by Cottonwood and Page, there's no sense of spending money that other towns have already done this review for.
I'm just bringing the potential liability issues to the attention of the board.
I have a question. If this doesn't get signed, and there's an emergency somewhere, public, that would require a lot of police, would we get that support from Easthampton in an emergency situation?
I suspect that we would.
We would. Okay.
But I remember other, not police ones, but fire and FEMA. The reason for these mutual agreements were to take care of liability, responsibility for who gets paid by what department, and drew the line on all this information. But if we don't have an agreement with the surrounding town, they come in, they're not covered under liability, or get reimbursement on an event.
We currently have active mutual aid agreement with all the surrounding towns, with the exception of the step that Easthampton recently took. With the signing of this document by the board, and with the concerns that I expressed to the board that I believe can be addressed after the fact, I see no reason not to go forward. Again, I have brought my concern to the select board. It's my responsibility to consider all the potential liabilities that police action might take in an occurrence in Southampton. It's also, since you people are signing this document, and it's going to be binding, that you be aware that there are potential issues that could arise as it's written.
Is there a way to opt out of this if we find out it's not?
Yes.
There is.
In the agreement, there's a 30-day opt-out notification.
Yeah, I'm just looking at all the towns, Huntington, Westhampton, Southampton, Easthampton, Hoyoke, and Westfield have signed. Montgomery, it doesn't look like they're part of the agreement. I don't know. It's just not highlighted at all in my map, saying who's interested and not, who signed on. But
Yeah, I'm not sure what the...
all right. So you're saying we can move forward with the signing, just that you're making us aware that there's an issue that you have with it.
Right.
But otherwise, everything else you're comfortable with?
Yeah, there are many areas in there that are points of clarification. As I said, the most significant area is that of the self-activation by police officers in other jurisdictions. Otherwise,
I don't want to beat this to a dead horse, Dave, but what happens when you send details out for construction jobs? Is this under the mutual aid, or is that nothing to do with it?
It is.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Are there any?
The existing mutual aid agreement that we've had, the last one was signed in 2004, speaks of and identifies, liability as far as who's responsible for an officer who's injured in the other department's community, if there's damage to a cruiser, and there's all provisions for that. Those types of things are all addressed in the current one.
Question? I agree 100% with you on that clause, because we do a lot of contract review and negotiation, and that could come back to really bite us. Have you been in contact with any of your peers to see if they all agreed to that, or some of them have taken it out?
Well, I got this document, as I said, about the second week of July. I had contacted the chief's attorney, a fellow by the name of Jack Collins, who was involved with the, I guess I'll call it the paring down or refinement of this document as it existed at that time. What Jack Collins had told me was that he had gotten this document originally from Easthampton, and that it had a lot of additions into it. It had cut and pasted stuff from other federal agreements and other state agreements, and he had to pare it down back to try to keep it in somewhat uniform with the other agreements that exist in the state. And the overall goal eventually is to make that a statewide agreement for municipalities. And so Jack Collins had told me that the interest was trying to keep all these regional agreements as close together as possible, so that when the day comes that they make one, it's going to be easier to do and there won't be as significant of changes in it. And so I asked him, I expressed my concerns about the self-activation clause in there, and the fact that if you look at that, there's a section in there that says clearly that a police chief can limit his own officers from self-activating another community, but there is no specific language that says that you cannot, or excuse me, that you can limit the self-activation clause by other officers coming into your community. So I talked to him about that. He sent me a very small paragraph of some language that we could add to that, and that would address that issue specifically. And so we didn't have any regional chiefs meetings until the first week of September or second week of September. And I brought that issue up then. So I received this document about the second week of July. The following week or so I spoke with the chief's attorney. And so he gave me this language that perhaps we could consider and add to it. I brought it up at the regional chiefs meeting in September. And because by that point there had been a large number of departments that had already gone through the effort of signing on to it, the conversation that ensued was that of, well, we don't really want to change it at this point, but if someone comes into my community and makes a bad arrest, they're on their own, and we're going to tell them, you own it, you know? So the response seemed to be that, we're not going to, nobody's going to assume the liability of some other department making a bad arrest in your community.
I would wonder if we approved this and there was a bad arrest, because we approved that it's on the books, that we are liable for it.
Can we approve the agreement minus that particular section, cross it out,
Well,
initial it?
This is non-binding right now.
Right, but I'm just talking,
Yeah.
you know, if we go ahead with,
I think it's gotta be resolved. I don't think all these communities, if they're on board with it, we're not. You know, I mean, this is gonna be a bureaucratic nightmare trying to figure out who's on what. My feeling is, the chief seems to be working with other parties involved here to resolve this issue of concern. But how big of an issue do you think it will be? I mean, what's the history here?
That remains, well, there's history right in that package you got from the
Okay,
Easthampton
but
Mayor.
what is the history? I mean, is one individual, I mean, we're talking about it, or, this is a common thing with all departments that are having this ongoing problem with self-activating?
Well, this is a whole new concept. You know, part of this, really the driving force behind this goes back to a drunk driving case called the Commonwealth versus LeBlanc, whereby a police department followed a suspected drunk driver into another community, or saw that drunk driver in another community, arrested that person and brought that person back to their own department, you know, processed them, prosecuted them, went through the whole system, and the courts found that that was an unlawful arrest because that local municipality didn't have authority in the other community. And for probably the last 15 or 20 years, the Mass Chiefs Association tried to get legislation passed which would address the LeBlanc issue. So LeBlanc always comes up in any kind of across-the-line jurisdictional or jurisdictional motor vehicle stops. And so they have unsuccessfully petitioned the legislature to amend the laws so that LeBlanc would no longer inhibit us. So, in essence, what this agreement does, it's a way to circumvent LeBlanc. And it's a way to allow police departments not to have their hands tied on enforcement like drunk driving, by just being able to go into that other community and make the arrest and then there's, you know, no issues. However, the caveat is that arrests have to be processed through our department. They can't bring that person back. Nothing in this new agreement changes the fact that the jurisdiction where the arrest occurs is where the arrest must be prosecuted and the complaints made and, you know, brought to court.
so if somebody's arrested on a former road stop or whatever, they'd have to contain the person, get a hold of Southampton, and you folks would have to go over there?
Right.
What's your thought? I mean, do you think we should do it on a temporary basis and you can work it out? Or you think we should not do it?
Well, initially, as I evaluated the pros and cons of this whole issue, I had thought that, well, maybe an approach might be, since we have this option of signing on at any point in time in the future, which now apparently has been removed by virtue of the cancellation of the existing mutual aid agreement with Easthampton. My initial thought was, well, maybe we'll take a slow approach to this, watch, see how it goes, see if these problems erupt in other communities. Back in at the end of July, I spoke with the Westfield chief, I spoke with the Northampton chief, I also spoke with a couple other chiefs, and I expressed my concerns to them and asked them if they had given any consideration to that, and they told me they hadn't. They hadn't even really realized that, or put that much thought into the fact that they could end up with a bad arrest. But again, it appears that, you know, since some of these communities had already signed on, there wasn't much of a desire to, you know, rewrite it. And I wasn't looking to have it rewritten. I was looking for perhaps maybe we can consider adding that one, you know, 2-3 line verbiage in there that now specifically says that I can limit the self-activation authority by officers from another community who are in Southampton. So really what this means, if we sign this and we go through with it, Westfield, Holyoke, Easthampton, you're leaving Opa after dinner some night, you may find yourself under arrest by one of those officers and us needing to step in and deal with it from that point on.
So could, example, so could a Easthampton police officer, they can't be active and be in the area of Opa. We'd have to be seen in Easthampton, they'd follow us over the border, right?
Not anymore.
But how can they be
sign
active?
this, And quite often, I see Easthampton cruisers at Cumberland Farms, I see them in Big Y parking lot, they've gone by my house many times. So, to some degree, it appears that there's some level of patrolling in Southampton by Easthampton as it exists now.
So would this, excuse the expression, would this allow another police department to kind of troll in our town if they see something? I
mean, I've been around the town. Dave, they don't patrol. They don't patrol. The state police are down the road, but I don't see them patrolling our streets, other than going from A to B, and it's a shorter distance. Or, I mean, I've had this conversation of why they come over here and get their coffee at our McDonald's versus theirs. They said it tastes better. But, I mean, these are comments. But, you know, are they on a patrol? I would think the supervisors would be a little upset. They're over here. You know,
I agree with you on that.
you know, but the thing I have is mutual agreements are the thing that we have to have. And it's the best tool we have to augment our forces when we need help. And this is going to address it. Your concerns, I'm hoping that, you know, it sounds like you've communicated several chiefs that you can work this out. And either we don't sign it until you work it out, or you're willing to live with it and resolve this. But for us to change a contract that's being affected by many towns, I don't think we have the purview to do that.
Well, nobody's proposing that yet.
Okay, well, John did.
One of the options, do we go back and, you know, strike it, ask them to strike it for us?
Yeah.
If we sign this tonight, Chief, can we come back in 2 or 3 weeks and see a month how it's going and see how you're feeling about it?
Well, my intention, as I indicated in the email to Heather, to pass on to you folks, was that I believe that there is a way that, you know, I can address some of those issues. And specifically what that way is that if the select board signs this, I intend to notify that, you know, it's my preference that officers from other communities don't engage in speeding enforcement and routine traffic minor offenses. It's my preference that if they're going to self-activate in Southampton, it would be for a serious public safety incident.
And do they have to abide by that, or it's up to them?
That's the whole area that's really unanswered, because the contract as written, or the agreement as written, specifically states that the chief can limit his own officers, but the language isn't really clear on whether or not we can limit that self-activation authority by officers from another community.
But we could ask, say, the Easthampton Police Chief to do it.
I believe that we can, and if they're cooperative, they'll appreciate my concerns and the potential liability to the department if a bad arrest is effected. You know, one of my other concerns on that is in looking down the road on it, I don't want to have our department thrust into a bad relationship with a neighboring department because my supervisors feel that the arrest that their officer made in Southampton was a bad arrest. And then my supervisor says, look, sorry, we're not taking the responsibility of this bad arrest. You're on your own, you're going to have to unarrest the guy. And you're really not lawful to unarrest somebody. But, you know, at that point, I can foresee where that officer is going to go back to their community with a bent nose saying, hey, Southampton didn't back me up. I made this arrest, I thought it was a good arrest. Their supervisor overrode my decision and said we're not going to perpetuate this or carry it forward. And so then, you know, I can foresee where they're going to go back and with hard feelings that, you know, we didn't support them and back them up. And again, I want to just stress, my entire concern is liability is potentially exposed to myself, my department, and this town.
If we don't sign it tonight, Chief, how long do you think it would take you to kind of come up with a solution so we can revisit this?
Well, as I've already expressed, I hope to be able to address it. The solution is I will send a letter and notify that department what my concerns are, and again, what my preference is insofar as the self-activation for serious offenses.
I guess my concern is if you send that letter and they say, we don't care, that doesn't solve anything.
No, and then when And if a bad arrest occurs in the future, they'll have been put on notice very clearly that we're not going to perpetuate a bad arrest.
Just in regards to if something bad happened, or your supervisor approves it, but you see it the next morning and say, wait a minute, I don't like this, that you can step in at that point too.
By that time, Ed, it would be too late, because if that many hours later, the clerk's already have been called, there would have been either the person's been released on bail, or, you know, in training that I've been to in the past, the best way to limit police liability for bad arrests is to ensure that as soon as that arrest is discovered to be a bad arrest, limit the amount of time that that person is in police custody. Lawsuits and damages are directly related to the amount of time that that person has been held in police custody in a bad arrest.
My concern is, you guys are all you police officers are trained basically the same way, under the same rules and the same guidance. But for the most part, with the exception maybe Springfield and Chicopee, you go to the same academy, so you all know the same routines and what's good and what's not good as a professional. So do you think it's clear, fair to say that most of you guys in the uniform do the right thing?
I would say that that's a fair statement. In a perfect world, everybody does the same thing with the way that they were taught, but, again, you need only look as far as the case that Easthampton provided to you. That was a non-arrestable past misdemeanor shoplifting arrest that was made in Southampton that shouldn't have been made.
How does the board want to proceed?
Well, I think we should sign it, and the chief can work with the chief in Easthampton or other chiefs that are involved to try and solve this issue that he has.
And we do have a 30-day notice in there if you really think it's going back. Can I ask one more question?
Mm-hmm.
If you ask the police chief in Easthampton, here's what I'd like you to do, would that cause a professional riff, or I don't know what the relationships are?
Given what's unfolded so far, I don't see where it's going to make any difference.
One way. Yeah, gotcha. Okay. So do you feel comfortable with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there are absolutely valid merits to this new agreement, and I want us to be a part of it. I have never, contrary to the letter that you got from the mayor, at no time did I ever express to the Easthampton chief or any of his representatives that I had no intention on signing on this. They imagined that for some reason. That's simply not the truth.
In that case, there's a second.
Yes, she said in that case, there's a second.
Did you make a motion?
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Chief.
I sign it right now, or you want me to just sign it and wait for you?
No, sign it out.
So is the lunch lady. Thanks. Okay.
So if you want to make a copy of that and give the original back to you.
Sure. Heather, can you make a copy of that and give the original back to the chief, please? Yes. Hi, Chief.
Hello.
How you doing?
Very good.
So the next item on the agenda is a request for an extension of a provision of the 5-mile requirement in the fire chief's contract. Ed and I and the fire chief met last 2 weeks ago. We met because this has kind of been on my radar for a little while. And so we had a conversation and talked to the chief about where he was at. His contract is up on October 15th.
Annual renewal. His
Annual,
contract's
sorry,
good
not
till
pop.
2016.
Thanks. Annual renewal, October 15th. Somewhere in that area. Okay, so somewhere in that area. And I think most people are aware that the chief does not live in Southampton yet, and as part of his contract is required to live within 5 miles of the fire station within that 1 year. So the chief has in a letter I think everyone has had a chance to read, expressed to us where he's at with that. If you want to refresh our memory, Chief, that'd be helpful. Yes, please.
My wife and I have looked at dozens of houses, and we're, hoping to find the ideal, maybe a little land, a barn. My wife would love a kitchen. And we haven't been successful. We've had friends, a number of friends that have offered to open their homes to us so that we could meet the contract. But just in discussions with you, the suggestion to get a 6-month extension allows us to find a home and not be in continued transition phase.
Just a clarification, it's 5 miles from the station,
Yes.
but it could be in Hoyoke, it could be in Easthampton.
Yeah, that's why I said 5-mile radius of the town.
Because it was from the town, we're actually within.
Right, no, 5-mile radius of the fire station.
Is that as a crow flies type of deal?
I would think as a radius, yeah.
So that'll give you a figure. How far is this?
Currently, we're 5 miles from the town, but we're 3 miles away from the radius.
Where in South Valley?
On Motor Street.
Yeah, I grew up in South Valley. Nice,
Yeah.
nice area.
So,
Now,
we're, like I say, we're looking at lots of houses and hoping to find something soon.
so the intent is to come to.
Oh, absolutely, and, all of our stuff is storage closets, and we're looking to settle in.
You had a tough first year, so we didn't know if we scared you off or.
So the board needs to make a
Just talking to John, a couple weeks ago, I mean, he's trying to get his house set to move and sell on the market. And he made a reference to a kitchen. She has no kitchen, everything's been gutted. And I don't mean to put that dirty laundry out there, but, he assured us that he's working on this and that, in his letter it says 6 to 9 months, but I'm inclined to 6 months should be a better approach for us. And I think that hopefully he gets it done in that period.
Or less.
More or less.
Do you own the house there?
I'm sorry?
Do you own the house there?
Yes.
Because in your letter, you said we rented a house in South Valley, then you said we.
It was a rental home.
Oh, it was a rental?
Of ours that we owned.
Oh, I see what you're saying, okay.
That we moved into to be closer.
Came to your own tenant,
We
huh?
got the,
Okay.
got the job.
So the board needs to decide whether they would like to stick with the 6 to 9 months, make it a strict 6 months, or not accept his letter at all.
I mean, personally, I think he's done a great job, welcome addition to the town, and if you're happy here, I think it's reasonable to give him a 6-month extension. And I would make that motion.
Second.
So just for point of clarification, we were saying 6 months, not 6 to 9 months.
Right.
Yes, okay. Is there any other discussion?
No.
All those in favor? Aye. And you want me to sign this?
Thanks.
All of us?
John's
Chief, you need to sign this addendum to your contract. Thanks. Thank you. Excuse me, thank you. Good luck.
Rearranging furniture.
Hi, Chief. Do you want to do your annual performance evaluation from up there, or would you prefer to come front and center?
This is, you do both.
Can you sign this, Jack?
Oh, do we have, where is the payroll warrant in this? Is it here somewhere? Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's down
below
below.
that, okay.
We're trying to weed out the audience before we get to all this other business, you know?
One question in there is, I put a sheet sideways for one reason. There was 2 time slips that weren't signed. One was Randall's when he came up and signed it, and the other is yours, time slip. So, you sign your time slip? I mean, from my point of view, if you're putting in a time slip, you need to be signed just to verify it.
All right, hold that thought, and we'll talk about it. So we have been doing these annual performance appraisals, Chief, on everybody. I think it's a great way to get in touch with everybody and see where everybody's at. And as I had expressed to you when we talked last week, and the same as I did with Randall and the fire chief, I have a hard time completing this on somebody that I don't work with on a day-to-day basis. So if you cook chicken nuggets for 500 kids every day, I can tell you exactly what you should be doing. However, I don't patrol the streets of Southampton, so it's a little harder for me to do. So generally, the way we do this is we start the conversation, we all give our thoughts, and then give you an opportunity to address, not address, or whatever you feel like you might want to say.
Okay.
So as far as your job performance goes, I can't see anything that you're doing that you shouldn't be doing, or more that you should be doing. I'm impressed that you have that much conversation over one contract, and that you are that specific, because if that's an issue for one contract and no one else paid attention to it, then you're obviously doing due diligence to the job that you should be doing. I do, however, think that maybe, and I only say this because I'm in school all the time, and if Officer Gold walks by, everybody knows who he is. But if you walked by, then nobody would know that you were the chief of police. And so I don't know how important that is, but it does feel a little important that maybe a little more public presence, at least with the kids, it would be important.
I just want to go on that one because I've had people, when we talked about it, about new people coming on, the fire chief and all that stuff, and I said, who's the police chief? They don't know. Who's the fire chief? Well, the new guy, John Workman, who's it? So I don't think you have a public presence out there, is what you were saying, and that surprises me because, you're probably the most important department head out there.
Maybe fire chief just has more going on than I do. It's
Well,
as far as
Like
things of-
public events and all that stuff, I think, public participation. I mean, to me, that's the department, I think. You brought up, yeah.
Jackie?
I don't know how much people know him or not. I'm not out with him, so I really don't.
And Holly?
Some of the comments I have is, I think he's doing it, as far as the job performance, a good job, but there's a few things that stand out to me that I don't know his day-to-day operation, but I had written some comments down here. I'd like to see him get out of the office more to the extent possible, and to develop a stronger relationship with the public. Show up at some events and know what's going on in town as far as activities, like baseball games and stuff.
Walk
I
to
know
school
it's a
day?
shocker day, but
Thursday? Very fine, chief.
I've been there every year that we've done walk to school.
Same, public event Thursday, walk to school.
Actually, I'd like to touch on that again. Regarding job performance, I was just talking about the people knowing you in the community, and like I said, I have no idea. But regarding the job performance, he's been very helpful with the CMAP program, and I brought that to his attention, and he gave it to Sergeant Illingsworth, and he really worked on that project. And he actually helped me with a signs for Crime Watch in my neighborhood, because our package store got robbed twice. And so he got a grant for us, and he went above and beyond. And really made us feel safe in the community.
Just as an aside, how long have you been the chief?
In my 16th year.
Okay. So, job knowledge, I don't think that I have any, I'm sure, chief, that you know your job inside and out. I don't have any complaints about that.
I was going to say, in my interactions with the finance committee and all that, I mean, you know your job, you know what I never receive any complaints or heard anything negative from that point of view. I talked to a few officers here and there, could be code of silence, could not be, but they seem to be happy. They seem to feel that they're, listened to.
We've had a lot of longevity with the full-time officers. They're happy working here.
That's a good thing. Yeah, so I have nothing negative to say on that by any means.
Ed?
I think he does a good job. He knows his job. He knows what has to be done.
As far as personnel management goes, I was going to say there's not much turnover going on in the police department, so he's managing his personnel pretty well, and enough that they don't want to go anywhere. So I don't think we have any issues there. Does anyone have anything to add?
No, same as with the job knowledge, it's,
My comment is he does a very good job in this area.
Fiscal management, I think, given the budget constraints, you're doing everything that you can. When push comes to shove, I guess we'll have to see where we end up at the end of the year. I know generally we have line item transfers in the police department, so how well we manage those this year is yet to be seen, but I think you're probably doing everything you can to keep it under control.
My hope is that this year that we won't go over it, as most of you, I know, John, you've heard, Ed has heard, and you and I spoke last week. Sometimes there are just things that occur throughout the year that are beyond control with public safety departments that are going to put us over budget. Overtime fluctuates, call volume fluctuates. Those are just, I can forecast the budget. But I think one of the most important things to keep in mind on staying within a budget is that you need to start off with an adequate budget to begin with. If you start the year off with a budget that is inadequate, that much harder to try to stay within it.
I know that, but we're faced with hardships for the last year, and it's nothing new, and we all would like to have the most ideal budget, but we've never had one. I mean, we've never had one.
We've never gotten the budgets that we need.
So I do have a question. If it comes to be the beginning of the last quarter of the year and you realize that you're going to be over substantially due to overtime, unforeseen overtime or unforeseen costs, is there a plan in place to not be over? And I don't want to say lay anyone off, because that's not what anybody wants, but I'm wondering if you have a plan to fix that at the end of the year if we think
Well,
it's
it's like
coming.
I had just said, it's my hope that we won't be over this year. However, hypothetically, whereas the vast majority of the police department's budget is labor, if it came down to that, then we would have no choice but to look at staff reductions.
Just to know if there's any other plans other than that.
There's, the police expense line item is already fairly small. As John can attest to throughout the years of finance committee, I've always tried to get that put up and increased, and it's very difficult to operate the police department with what we have. Almost a good third of the police expense budget usually goes to fuel. We spend $36,000 a year in fuel. So it is. It's very difficult trying to provide a quality service to the public, have police cars out there being seen, doing active patrols, and all the while save money.
I was going to say, from my finance committee area, that's where I think there was always one of these clashing things, because I think you felt that you needed the department to be this size to be proper for the town, and the budget restraints said, well, you can't do it. So you always were over budget at the end of the year when you said, I got to do what I got to do. I think this is a year right now where we don't have that money at the end of the year, where we can't do that anymore. So I think proactively we've got to look at this. And up to date, you're doing fine in your budget. So I think in the past years it was just let it go over and we'll get it at the end of the year. And I don't think that philosophy is going to work this year.
Well, I don't know if I would entirely agree with that, John. I've never had a cavalier attitude that just let it go. I've always very strictly watched the budget. There isn't a person in the police department or in the communications department that couldn't attest to the efforts that I go through to try to save labor money wherever we can. We don't automatically call in full-time people at time and a half. We make every effort to have a part-timer come in and work a shift instead. The difficulty is with the police and communications department is we just can't not man the dispatch center. We can't not man the cruiser. Other departments may have the luxury of, if that person for whatever reason doesn't come in, they don't backfill that person's position. They just let it go empty for the day.
Time management, Chief, I'm sure you manage your time just fine, other than things we've talked about already and getting out in the public. How to fit that in your schedule, I don't know, but I don't have any issues.
It seems as though there's just not enough hours in the day.
I concur. Anyone else?
I have no problem with this.
I have no knowledge of anything on that.
Okay. Communication, so, I think, we talked last week, and I left feeling great. I thought we had a great conversation. I don't know how many, I can only speak for myself, I guess is what I will say, and it can be a little intimidating to go talk to the police chief, because you have a presence about you that is big and strong, and you have a loud, deep voice, so I can't deny the fact that it is a little intimidating to talk to you. However, after sitting with you for a while, the tension, I felt at ease. And so I'm hoping,
I don't like it.
well, I'm hoping that somehow that this kind of relationship will filter out into the rest of the community that you work very closely with. I don't know how that will happen, but I'm positive that it will work out, and that kind of relationship will move outward.
You did hear that I had an erroneous email address.
I did hear that, and so, I mean, I guess there's a lot of things that are communication-based. One thing I guess I would like to see is, I mean, if I call you and I say, can we talk, there's no question, there's always time. It would be nice to have an update from the police department weekly, just, how's it going, whether you initiate that, or I initiate that, or Heather initiates that, or whoever it is, just 10 to 15 minutes of how are things going, rather than waiting until there's an issue on one side or the other to have a conversation. Maybe some of the things that get dragged on could be alleviated sooner by all of us being proactive in regards to communication. But
I had basically very similar conversations. What I'd like to see happen is you inform the board more often. We don't see you in here much informing us about any ongoing problems, whether it's out in the street, in the department, in the building, whatever. But we want to hear more what's going on. I know we don't want it to get into a panic situation, but there was times that you needed officers, and we need to plan. And procedurally, if there's some changes in procedures, please keep us in the loop and talk to us. And tonight was a good experience between you and us as far as the agreement was concerned with mutual aid. But you have a lot of agreements out there, and we need to be kept informed of what's going on and how it's happening. And the only thing that I think is an issue that I've heard and I've experienced is that when you go on vacation, nobody knows it. So at least tell Heather or tell the chairman when you go on vacation, because we don't know who to go to sometimes. I'm assuming Mike would be there, but we don't know where the function is. And I've had comments from the department, from citizens, that they'll go in looking for you, and they get an answer like, I don't know where he is, and I'd like to see him. Well, I don't know when he's coming back. You can tell me. So those are just comments I'm relaying to you that are being spoken, and I think we can improve those.
Yeah, I guess my experience is with the police department, you seem to have great communication, but when it comes to the administrative side of the house, you hear comments, from the accountant, from the treasurer, when I was on the finance committee. It seems like you have to tug and pull when there's a new policy, new procedure. We want backup information because you don't feel that you need to give it. And I'm going to guess, and I'm just guessing from what I said before, the time slip not being signed is probably an issue there too, because you don't feel that you need to do these. And I know with Heather's brought up different things. It seems like you don't like administrative side of the house in that you kind of fight it, and you don't want to go along with like the others. I mean, that's finance committee and just what I hear. And that's my impression. This side of the house for communication is where I would say it's work's needed. I think you gotta give in sometimes. You may not agree with it, but it's a new policy. Why not just do it and go in line? Why fight it?
Just for the record, John, I'm not opposed to new policies.
Yeah.
But first of all, I believe that new policies need to be valid, number one. And number two, they need to, before they are automatically initiated, that they should be shared with the departments and department heads that they're going to affect, so that those issues can be ironed out. Recently, the issue with the time cards was one such example.
When you brought forward a
Yes.
couple of years ago, yeah.
That was something that was developed. My input wasn't solicited, and it was put into place. Same thing with the purchase orders. That came out and that was put into place, and there was no pre-meeting, no precursor to that to involve input. It was, this is what we're doing, and it starts today.
I mean, on the time slips, I agree with you. You brought it forward. I think we all agree with that, and we had a discussion with Heather. I think on the purchase orders, that's just an administrative function that was put into place, and agree or not, it's a reasonable thing to do, and need to go along with it. I mean, I don't think we can talk about every single thing and get everybody's input on it. So I think if it's a reasonable policy, because you don't like it, isn't a reason to say no. I mean, that's my thought on that. I think the PO system's a great system, and it serves a purpose.
We had talked about the PO system, and I think that there may be some room for some sort of exceptions, but again, if we're openly talking with each other regularly, then chances are those kind of problems will not happen. We'll just come up with solutions before they get that bad. But can I ask one thing? Can you check your mailbox? Because I know that you had just gotten the paper, but it was in your mailbox for about a week. So maybe you could just stop by and check it when you drop off your bills or your payroll, or just in case they leave you a note.
And I guess the credit card issue came up for gas. And I think how you did it and why you did it was fine, but I think a communication back to the chair or Heather would say, here's why I got it, so that we find out doesn't take us, blindsided. The reasoning was fine, it's just the follow-up.
Bear in mind, John, there never has been any policy or any direction about that. I, was left in a situation where, I need to try to obtain tax-exempt gas, otherwise it's gonna hurt my budget even more, and so I took action. Maybe that's something to do with the nature of the job, problem comes up, you address the problem.
No, like I said, I think we all agree to address the problem properly. Just the communication after the fact, saying, here it is, here's why I did it, in case you see this number anywhere, or you get a bill. That way Heather would have known, or somebody. So
I didn't think you were eligible for tax exempt gas. Only off-road vehicles are exempt from tax exempt.
We are, 18 cents off of a gallon federally. We don't have to pay the federal tax.
that's the same with us, Ed.
Okay.
State, you get stuck with it.
Jackie?
I'd like to address communication. Even before I was on the select board, I'd call and I'd say there's a problem in my village, as we call it. And somebody was always there, and you'd always take my call. And it's even better now that I'm a select board member. You've never ever have I ever called there and you weren't busy or you weren't there. So I've just never experienced any.
I don't think the issues are the communication between, us. I think John hit it on the head. It's the administrative side of it, and there's room for improvement. There's room to meet in the middle. That's the communication issues that we're bringing forward, not
Right,
we need something.
but we as a board need to tell him what we're up to and have some input before we say, okay, and this is what you have to do now.
Right.
Fair is fair. I mean, he's
Hence the
been,
meet in the middle part.
right. I mean, he's been here for 16 years and he's done a fantastic job. And all of a sudden, just to change something, it's sometimes not fair.
But I think it's a two-way street.
Yes,
But,
I don't disagree.
Jackie, I know what you're saying, but, a lot of these issues have been ongoing and ongoing and ongoing. So they're not new issues. And I think we all agree that everybody's aware of what the issues are. But, and I think there has been movement all the way around to make it better. And things happen, It's not utopia over here or over there, but people are trying to work and get this resolved, I think.
It's good just to get it out and talk about it, and,
That way there's an understanding, hopefully.
Okay. Teamwork. I don't have any issues with teamwork.
Well, I probably, not that they're issues, I think they're just things that I noticed that I'd like to see the chief have better communication and interactions between all department heads to actively promote the interests of the town. And I think for the most part he does that, but he probably is not aware that when we get cited for whether our paperwork is in order or not, and we have to deal with auditors and issues like that, and we have to have things in place. And when we don't have them in place after 2 or 3 years, it can get frustrating. And these are what I'm talking about in the best interest of town. We need to address these things and resolve them so they don't recur, because they hurt us. They hurt us financially, our bond ratings, and in order for us to do our business, I think it's come a long way to improve upon that, but I think we still got a ways to go.
I don't disagree with you. I guess I just grouped that kind of comment in with communication.
That's fine.
I think a couple of these go back to the communication.
Problem solving?
I just want to go back to the teamwork.
Sure.
His employees have been incredible in helping us with the CMAT program, and he's rallied the troops, and sorry to use that term, but you know what I mean, like he's really got them focused on what we need for the safety of the town, and I think his teamwork and communication skills have been really helpful. And the program is taking off, and it's, you know, great for that.
Problem solving, I would say after our conversations with fiscal management and all those other things, I think his problem solving skills are up to snuff, and he recognizes problems and fixes them as needed. John or Ed?
As he said, he sees a problem, he takes action, so, yeah.
Ed?
No, I thought it was fun.
Creativity and initiative, I'm not so sure you can be too creative with the law, although I guess if I got pulled over, I might try and think of a way to do that. I don't know if the chief would, but, I think you're doing okay. Anybody?
Yeah, well, I think just the program that I downloaded from Logan City, Utah for the, that whole program is FEMA-based, but then your department has made it applicable, only for Southampton. So there was some creativity there, things that they changed in the program that has been really helpful to the community.
Great. No? Above and beyond, I would say as far as the school goes, at this very minute, he's been very helpful in coming up with solutions for the kids that are walking to school, for the parent pickup line, for all of the issues that are going over there. I think as much as they're probably a public safety issue, I think him being involved in that has been above and beyond. Very helpful.
No, I think you always come up with ideas when there's problems and solutions. You try to think through it and, be proactive, so I've always been happy with that.
Well, with the Crime Watch program in our neighborhood, he went to Agawam, we got our signs, and also he wrote a grant so that we could have Officer Cook come in and talk to us.
Mr. Pollard? So, an individual goal, Chief. I don't have a goal for you, but I'm welcome to ideas, and sometimes goals are better accomplished from an individual and not from me. But I'm happy to hear any comments you have about this performance appraisal.
Well, when you ask about goals, what comes to my mind is, that saying that the light at the end of the tunnel is temporarily shut off. It's difficult to have goals and try to achieve those goals with the financial constraints that we're on. There's a lot of things that I would like to do in the department, but we simply can't afford to do them. Insofar as procedurally, with the operations department, we stay on top of things. It's just to go and say and set a goal, most of the goals that are in my mind, are financially related, you know? When I took over the department, I made a lot of improvements, a lot of changes, professionalized the department to a significant degree from where we were previously. It's a very well-respected department. You know, I think a lot of the goals that I had originally, when I first took over the department, we've achieved those goals, you know? And over the long term, you know, like I say, some of the things that I would like to have done and improve, we just simply can't do it.
Well, how about we just have a goal of meeting our budget or maybe coming down? Maybe.
Well, I mean, there's no two ways about it. We don't have any money to fill in the hole. So, you know, departments have to do their job, and if they can't do their job, we're gonna have to start looking at that closely and see how to come up with the money to address it, whether it's layoffs or more layoffs or what. But that's what department heads are supposed to do, be ahead of the curve, you know. It's not hard. I was it for 30 years. It's not easy. There's no golden crystal ball how to solve it, but, you know, you can't keep going the same way when you know you're gonna have holes. You can't fill them.
Are there any other comments? No. Well, Chief, thanks for coming in. Appreciate it.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that time slip?
Oh, yeah, so that's.
You said the hold off.
Yeah, go
Is
ahead.
there a reason not for signing it, or was it just an oversight?
This was a matter that was previously addressed by Mike Phelan in his chair. And myself and Donna and Vicki and Mike and Reggie at the time had sat down and talked about that whole issue. And it was determined, finally, that the purpose of the salaried employee in doing a time card was specifically to document the usage of benefits.
Yeah, the exception reporting, yeah.
And the concern that was raised at that time was a previous employee, who there was a question raised about whether or not that employee was entitled to the amount of unused time that was stated.
Right.
And so, we also talked about the fact that in the work world, salaried people don't do time cards. I don't know about you, John, but you're salaried. Do you do a time card?
I do an exception report that I sign off on electronically. I agree with you that I don't think, because we're doing exception reporting, you don't need to put any time down that you're here. You would put time down when you're gone, a vacation day or something. But by sending in a blank time slip with your signature, that certifies that you didn't take any time off. And if we found out later on that you took time off, that would be falsifying payroll records, which would be...
Well, John, I mean, we need to be consistent. If everybody's doing it, we don't need exceptions in the whole. You know, I don't know what the big thing is about signing a timesheet that you're here and you're not here. But, you know, how can people proceed without being a mind reader and move forward and do these things if we tell them, we as a board have told numerous people they need to sign their timesheets.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. It needs to be signed. It doesn't need to have, I came in at 8, I left at...
I'm just saying, they need to be signed, and if he wants to write salary across it,
Yeah.
I have no problem with it.
Yep.
But they need to be signed,
Yep.
and that's what we agreed to.
I
Now,
agree.
Mike made a change to that, but Mike is one individual, he's not the board.
I don't think he made a change to that. I think that was the vote that we took, was that we didn't, if you wrote salary, that was fine, but we wanted to track the holiday and vacation and sick time. So I guess I concur with John that, you know, by not signing it, although it's your handwriting, there's nothing to say that somebody else didn't submit it for you. You know, by signing it says, I didn't take any holiday time, I didn't take any sick time, I worked my, whatever I work, and then submit it. So I don't have any issue with the way it is, other than the lacking of the signature. And
So, would you like something official from us saying that needs to be signed? I mean, I know you want to go by the rules and all that, so if you're feeling Mike said no, do you want us to reconfirm that that's what we're looking for?
I don't think that's necessary.
Okay. So just a signed blank time slip basically says you took off no
time,
time.
and you worked,
Yeah.
and that's it.
It The others, I think some of the others
There's
actually.
other ones that don't sign it?
No, well, Randall didn't, but that was a mistake. He came up and said sorry. And others actually put in their time, which I think is overkill. But,
Well, going back a few years, that was required.
but I think consistently, we should tell the department heads that unless you take time off, earn time off, all you need to do is submit it and sign it with the date.
Well, just to comment on that, part of it was, I was not aware that there was no, when we revised the timesheets the first time, what ended up happening was, the reason we did it, people were getting very frustrated with having to put, as a salary time employee, and I know myself included, if I come in at 7 or I come in at 6:30 and then I leave at 11:15 to go to a meeting over here and then I come back, just to put the in and out times, it was crazy. So we said if we just summarize, it'd be better. We weren't aware I wasn't aware at the time that there was a vote once taken that you could just write salary. If we had known that when we revised that second sheet, we would have done it so that it simply concurred with the requirements the board had before, which was simply just vacation time and signature at the bottom if there was no change.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, all salaried individuals, it's an automatic, they break them the salaries upstairs on an annual basis.
Absolutely.
And it's done, it's just not,
So for instance, if myself or the chief submitted our time card late, we still get paid. It's not going to change our ability to be paid. If, the building inspector, if he was on, or bad example, he's our, if for instance, I don't know, someone in Donna's office turned in their time card late, they're not going to get paid this week because they don't know how much to pay them.
It'll automatically go through. So I would think the people in payroll know who are exempt, so you shouldn't have to put salary across it, just sign it and date it.
Well, what I'm saying is if it's the will of the board, I can simply modify it, put it through another cycle of, PPB and Board of Selectmen.
Just write salary on it. Just write salary on it.
just
and
write
be
salary
done
on
with
it, and as long as it's signed, it means he's
Great.
there for that week.
I don't think
Okay,
we
so
should-
let's make sure we all know. So we're gonna ask salaried people to write salary across it, the week ending, sign it and date it. If there's sick, holiday, vacation, they put it in for
Yeah.
exceptions.
And I think that has been going on.
I mean, I know that's how I do it, and that's okay with me. I don't see an issue with it.
Is that all right?
All right?
Can you sign your time card before you leave? By the way. Yeah, it's right here.
Yeah.
I even pulled the page out for you.
Can't get away with anything.
Well, she's the lunch lady, so she knows.
Yes,
She's in charge.
Yeah, you don't pay for your lunch, you're going down.
That's right.
Well, you say that. I'm just.
Well, I know
if you
it.
get a letter. Nilda?
I have a question. I initially came to, for the evaluation forms because back, I don't know, some months ago, I had gotten,
Right here.
PPP.
For you. I wondered what you were doing.
I thought you said.
Sorry, yes.
I got the reevaluation forms because I thought that John had said at one of the meetings that the evaluation, the department heads were going to have participation from, community or staff or, people that they work within the department to have some feedback from that. And then I didn't hear anything else, but then Art sent me these forms, and when I printed it out, 80% of the questions I wasn't able to answer, just like some of
Right.
how you felt. So I guess my question is there a vehicle by which department heads you can get feedback as to how community or staff feel about their department heads?
I think that we had that conversation. It wasn't,
Kind of a 360 review.
yeah, and there was some positive feedback regarding it and some negative feedback regarding it, and it hasn't really gone much farther than that. I think it would be helpful for us, since we're the ones writing these, but I don't know how much information you're going to get that's helpful if an employee, say a police officer, is evaluating their boss. I don't know that you're going to get true information. You know what I mean?
Get it off Mass Live.
Oh, God.
So I think it's important for us to, when we're writing these, make sure that we're asking questions of people and paying attention to comments from the public and adding that into our review. So that, I mean, I'm hopeful that you could tell that we have had conversations with others and we're able to, you know, put that in. But I'm not sure that if you gave a firefighter or a police officer a 360 review that you're going to get true information.
So the 3 evaluation forms that I was sent, there's a self-evaluation. Is that being submitted? Yes. And then there's a non-managerial evaluation.
And those are meant for like Donna to do on her people or Heather to do.
On Jennifer.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And is that cycle an annual cycle in terms of?
These are an annual cycle, these are, but I'm not sure that we've actually rolled that part out appropriately for it to be starting to be done that way.
I think right now it's just a tool. I
not
believe there was
required.
something written in the PPB policy that went with it. I don't recall what it is at this hour. We'd have to look it up in the morning, Nelda, when I have fresh eyes.
I just wanted sort of, you know, I've been sitting here and I didn't.
I think at this moment, it's a tool, not required, but something helpful that going down the road, we can evaluate more and make more stringent.
I was looking to have it on the discussion for the next department head meeting, if that's helpful.
No, there in years past, maybe 15 or 20 years ago, most department heads did reviews on their individuals. It was because it was a merit-based system. And you use that review to whether you offered a 50-cent raise, a dollar raise, or no raise at all for an individual. And in the highway department case, there are reviews, but usually they're disciplinary reviews and stuff like that. But when you had unions come in, everything is automatic. Not that it's good, but it does not look at merit. And in your case, it's still merit, if they ever give raises out anymore.
Well, that's a long time. Okay, well, I appreciate your response and.
One more thing, PCFs and stuff.
Thanks.
Thanks, Nilda. All right, let's see how quickly we can go through the rest of.
Oh, we're done.
No, we have some things we have to do.
That have to be done. So we have appointments of fiscal 15 poll workers, Virginia Ahart, Barbara, how do you say her last name? Origi. Ruth Bernier, Alice Brewer, Florence Collins, Ann Gerard, Teresa Gorel, Virginia Huntley, Monica Labrie, Deborah Pinsky, Robin Richard, and Eileen Kuchar. I would accept a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. How about the cultural council? Is that an appointment also?
Yes, ma'am.
I would accept a motion to appoint Carol Goulet to the cultural council.
So moved.
Was there a second? Second. All those in favor? The approval of minutes, I'm going to.
Yeah, we can pass those.
Over, thank you. We have a payroll warrant. Oops, I ripped your folder.
You ripped the full, it's not mine, it's the treasurer's office. They don't have money in their budget to get a new one.
I have a payroll warrant,
Use some of Dave's.
payroll deduction warrant 15-13A in the amount of $130,478.28. Is there a motion?
Motion to
Okay.
approve.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor? I have a payroll deduction warrant PD 15-13, the amount of $39,412.84. Is there a motion to sign?
Motion.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Then I have a payroll warrant 15-15 in the amount of $225,083.95.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Someone say?
No, I was like, what's going on?
Well, no, I was giving him a chance.
I wasn't taking it.
Heather, just this one and these, or just this?
So everything's probably a separate packet, so if the packet.
It's not in
comes with a
here, I
cover
can sign
sheet,
it on here.
yes.
Thank you.
Aye, aye.
Almost done, hold on. Ed, you can sign this. Jackie and John sign those. sign the top, John signed the second sheet. Then we have, where's the bill warrant?
You already signed it last week, you already approved it last week, I just need a vote.
I need a vote to approve the bill warrant 15-14 in the amount of $127,257.41.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We have some PCFs. We have a PCF for Jean Risk, who will replace the open position in the treasurer collector's office.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
She'll be starting tomorrow.
Oh, you took them to granted.
I have a PCF for Lucille Dalton, who will be taking over for Ruth Bernier as the assistant town clerk.
How many hours is that?
18.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I believe she
Aye.
starts next week.
Oh, good, a little time in between.
I have a PCF for Shannon Cutler, who will replace Janine Domina in the assessor's office.
Administrative, is there somebody in there now temporarily?
They temporarily ended, and there hasn't been anyone in there.
Who was that? Was that Christie?
Yes.
Okay. That's the position then, okay.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I believe she starts after the holiday on the 15th-ish.
Good, you're on top of things.
And we have a PCF for a part-time, no benefited, temporary position for Kevin Toll in the building department.
That's Kevin.
That's my current assistant. He's just gonna pick up a couple hours over in the building department since Jean's the current person over there.
He's gonna kick it up to 20.
It shouldn't matter too much. It would only be an occasional for a couple weeks
Okay,
until,
okay.
the idea is to get things situated before Tom gets
That's fine.
in place, which we're gonna
As
try
long
to
as the average is-
electronic.
Except it hasn't gone to the PQB yet.
It has actually, they approved it last week. We
I was gonna
couldn't
say,
put our
how we
fingers on
approved
the
it.
final version, so if you sign this one, Art signed it in the
Because I know
morning.
we saw this
But they
and signed
approved
it.
it.
They did
Yeah.
approve
I
it
don't
last
wanna
week.
break my
I
own
actually
No,
had a
I was
member.
there. I was there. It happened. That's why I was confused.
They couldn't put their fingers on the original version at finance, so I gave them a copy.
Is there a motion to sign?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
You can tell when it's after 9 o'clock when I'm signing these, if there's ever a question.
We don't need to do any executive session, so if you just want to give calendar and announcements, that should conclude us.
Okay, so we have an upcoming meeting at the North School at, the special town meeting is October 21st. That's at 7 o'clock in the North School cafeteria. However, the Board of Selectmen need to meet at 6 o'clock in the North School library to go over a few things before the meeting.
6 o'clock?
What?
6 o'clock.
Like anything on the regular
Like
agenda.
anything on the irregular agenda, payroll or anything like that. So you need to be at the North School library at 6 o'clock.
How many questions do you need? What's happening?
Huh?
12.
Oh, just one more thing. Is it possible to move next week's meeting with Tom Quinlan till 6? Would that work for everybody?
Instead of 5:30?
Yeah.
That would work, it would work even better if it was at 7, but
Oh.
that's okay.
You wanna do like 7 in the morning?
Well, I don't think Tom, 6 o'clock is fine.
But Tom's gonna be here at 5 in the morning, come on.
6 o'clock is fine with me.
6 o'clock would work? Okay.
If there's nothing else, this belongs to Charlie.
I'll take care of it.
Well, there is one thing,
Okay.
the budget update.
Wait, you need to go to the finance committee meeting because they're starting and you are the liaison to the finance committee.
But I
But
think,
there's
I mean, not to
Here?
defend John, I don't think you were appointed to the finance committee,
Yes,
were
he
you?
was.
He was.
He was.
When?
I think these secret meetings you two have
There's no secret meeting.
Yeah, because I never heard of it, so.
John, you were absent that meeting when you became clerk, and we also did the liaisons.
Great.
It was the first meeting. I'll bring in a copy next week.
Okay,
But what's your
so-
question about the finance? Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to go over a couple items, and they're more under Heather's domain, I comes to find out. But, you know, the gas and electric for Town Hall and Larrabee, they're like at 57 and 60%.
They're
It
only
should be
gonna
at-
get worse.
It should be at 25.
I happily spend less for you.
Well, the thing is, I mean, yeah, we can laugh about it, but with the winter coming, they're only going up. So we gotta get that money somewhere. We gotta
So-
take it from somebody.
We're working on a couple things, actually, John, now that you brought it up. Jackie and I have been working with a couple of the companies on seeing if we can participate in aggregation plan for the town buildings
Yeah.
to participate in. That would give us a fixed rate instead of doing a variable rate.
Yeah.
So we're working, my assistant has reached out to all of the ones we've talked to before. He hasn't heard back from them.
Yeah.
So that was his note this afternoon.
So
I
that'll help
noticed.
some, but it's like two and a half
The other
times
thing
what
is to help the residents, because they're gonna be in the same boat.
Yeah.
There's actually something called municipal aggregation, which I think
Yep.
this board might have discussed at some point previous to me coming
Is
aboard.
that where everybody's opt-in?
Yes, but that's something, you have to make sure we really wanna do, because it brings everyone in the community in on it.
Right.
So there's actually a meeting at the PVPC, and I mentioned it earlier. That's at the end of this month. Jackie, I believe, is gonna try to go with me on this one. It's a roundtable discussion, and they're gonna bring in someone from the state to say, is this really worth it? What's this all about? And who are the major company players who actually offer this program? So they'll be there, and we'll get some more information on it.
Yeah, from what I've read, it sounds like it's a good feature to have, especially for the individual homeowners, because they can save money. If they don't want it, they can opt out. Boom. Okay, so again, those are two areas we're gonna definitely get hit with, and down on Larrabee building expenses, we're almost at 100% already.
Yeah, two things on that. Number one of the items on there for $300 and something was misappropriated. So they had put on a RICO charge, which is supposed to be on the photocopier. So I made a note to the accountant's office to take it out of the photocopier piece. So that will give us $319. The problem was, and that's why we asked for money to be transferred on the special town warrant, because it was.
And we need to reimburse.
We've already paid everything. The problem was there was a $7,000 bill for the HVAC system from SNE that we didn't know about, because the previous year, we never got a bill in 2014. We didn't get that bill till this year, or if we did get it, no one transferred the bill over to the accountant's office to ever be paid. So as far as we knew, when we were budgeting, it wasn't an expense that we had paid in 2014, so we didn't plan to pay it in 2015 or FY15.
I guess the key is we're gonna have to come up with money, and that's why, I said every opportunity we get with, $5,000-$10,000 here and there.
Well, I don't see coming up with money for anything.
Well, we have to though.
But then you gotta start cutting.
Well,
Cutting more. Cuts are not enough.
We're gonna have to cut somewhere.
Right.
But where?
Well, that's why I think we need to spend some time and seeing where people are and asking them, are you all right, or is this a misnomer? Are you overspent because it's the time of year you spend? Or were you gonna look for trouble? We can't deal with a trouble in February, March.
I don't think you're gonna get people telling you that they're managing their budget wrong though, so I think that maybe there needs to be some specific information that we're asking for to say, this is what your labor is, and if you continue at this rate, this is where you will be and how much you'll be over, therefore you need to cut this.
Well, that's what I'm doing here.
It's not a matter of, what it comes down to is, we might have to tell them to cut it.
Yep.
And they're not gonna want to, because there is no pockets of money.
Right.
And the amount of money that will be left over in the budget is gonna be even less than it ever was, because they're so frugal right now.
But the two areas that were sticking out we addressed tonight, one was Randall, and he gave the reasoning why, and the other is town administrator. And I bet we're gonna about $10,000-$15,000 over budget, at least in the electrical.
I think it'll be more.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
And that's
we're
gotta
Cold
come from
winter,
somebody.
if it's a cold winter, it is.
Yeah.
well,
So we can say to Heather, fine, cut your budget elsewhere to make up that, but obviously you can't. There's no money anywhere. So somebody's gonna have to.
well, this is the time of year to negotiate a rate for the electrical, and that's what we talked about, and we're gonna deal with that.
But in reality, when you
That's not gonna stay.
extrapolate,
We're
that's
talking
No,
not.
I'm talking like
$100,000.
long-term for electrical.
Yeah, it's the
That's what
long-term
we need to do
solution,
that,
you're right.
yeah. So we don't deal with it next year.
So I'll keep bringing these up, but these two were addressed, so everybody else, there's some small line items that are over, but if they got $1,000 budget, I'm not.
Some of the line items, just to let you know, if they're software, it's because people purchased their software at the beginning of the year. And a few of them are minutely over, and I've already spoken with most of them to correct it with a
And there are
request.
some revolving accounts that maybe receipts have not been posted.
Well, most of those are recognized, if somebody's, it's under a maintenance line, it's probably because they prepaid the maintenance, so yeah, those I didn't bring up
These are
And I
two-
know our workman's comp is over already because our bill came in higher than we had projected for, and we just got another small bill, but we just got funds from, we had
Is
to
that a
touch
new
the
insurance
reserve.
company?
Huh? We don't have a new one yet, Ed. We didn't sit down with Maya in time last year. We didn't sit down with them till June.
When you-
This year, we're sitting with them in January.
Sit down with Maya. I just want to
You'd
be
like the
involved with
invite?
the rates that the workman's comp rate, because they're all over the place, with different trades.
Are there any other
What
conversations?
happened to the gas and electric with the streetlights? Remember that gentleman wanted some information about the streetlights?
I sent it to him, so he does have what he needed. And we have also had inquiries at times with folks who want to sit down and talk about potentials of, talking about solar energy and the like with the town and seeing what our options are with that. So we might be in such a position where this might be an option. So.
But I think we'd have to make an investment first, right, with solar?
There's actually a grant out there in Germany that we're looking at. There's apparently only 2 communities who get it. The grant has not been released yet, but I have signed up to receive information on it upon its release. And once we get it, we can fight for it, but apparently not many people know about it. But then again, it's from Germany, so it's worldwide, so we'd have to fight pretty hard.
What about the companies coming out? I mean, we deal with that a lot at the state, where companies will come out and they'll fund a solar project and they'll take a percentage of the savings,
Through that, but our projects were too small for them.
even on the landfill, the old
When
landfill.
we went to the energy group here, we had all kinds of grant money to pay various, like Seaman and stuff like that, to give us grandiose thing. When we came down to it, they were too small of projects.
Okay, let's do that.
I would accept a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Um,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.